May stop mid-sentence. Mr. Patender, is punctuality not important for? Professor, Luna said from her seat, cool and precise. Professor Yang sent him to the infirmary. There's a note on your desk. Please continue. May checked, found the paper sheet ignored, and nodded. Take your seat, Mr. Patender. As I was saying, smart merchants buy low and store, but they must factor storage costs and degradation risk. Rin slid in beside Taro, ignoring the whispers. Taro had already filled a page with neat notes. A well-stored iron crystal can appreciate by up to 30% if sold at the right time, May went on. Most still saw a run as the rotting boy. One close call wouldn't change that. He'd need a lot more wins. Still, Luna had stepped in again, even if it was just procedure. Crystallography followed. Welcome to the lab, Professor Song said, laying samples on the table. Before the mines, you learn what you're looking for. He held up a fingernail-sized shard. Iron rank crystal. Most common. With basic support, each student receives one per day. Note the duller glow, the uneven lattice. He lifted a brighter piece 10 times larger. Bronze. Worth 10 iron. The room leaned closer. Silver is worth 100 iron, he said, raising a strawberry-sized shard. Gold 1,000. He hefted a fist-sized crystal and let his gaze rest, just for a beat, on Luna. While Song explained properties, Run did the math. His evolution needed bronze. 10 times pricier than what Taro would need. The mushrooms in his hair gave a faint pulse. He'd have to find another way to source them. Ambitious students asked how to earn higher rank support, Song said, smiling at the eager faces. You'll have 3 paths on my semester exams. He sketched 3 branches on the projection. First, evolve your beast to the next rank. Direct but risky. Most of you will study more first. Nods around the room. Second, submit a thesis detailing your evolution method. Proof of understanding and a viable plan. More nods. Safe and popular. And third, he paused. Prove you can acquire support on your own. Murmurs. If you can gather crystals and synthesis materials yourself, without using family money, whether on campus or during practicals, the academy will match what you collect. That's why this school is expensive and why you can earn part of it back if you're capable. His tone hardened. Field work has risks. The academy isn't responsible if you choose that path. Regardless of the route, you still must pass all theory exams. Knowledge underpins cultivation. He clapped once. Now, want to see where we find the good stuff? Chair scraped. Attention sharpened. They're controlled zones, he said, amused. Safe enough to learn. Not easy. The mushrooms in Ren's hair flickered again. If there were practice caves, there had to be deeper tunnels under the academy. Maybe those ruins he'd sensed. Bring your crystal field guide, Song added. You'll need it to spot viable veins. As the class filed out, Ren couldn't help the small smile. The practice caves would be perfect cover to look deeper. Welcome to the East Cave, Song said at a reinforced gate. One of 4 student zones, conveniently close to Grey Wing. Rin and Taro traded a look. Not an accident. Poorer students spent more time mining. Inside, clean-lit tunnels spiraled down. Upperclassmen chipped at marked seams with care. Depth markers dotted the wall every 25 meters. These areas are safe for practice, Song said, tapping a vein. But mistakes still cost. Learn to read the rock. Don't crack a liquid pocket by accident and inhale mana gases. He stopped at the 50-meter mark. Mana density doubles every 50 meters. He produced a detector crystal. It glowed faintly here. At 100 meters, where our regular patrols end, density is 4 times surface levels. And the monsters? A low roar rolled up from below. Several students stiffened. Every 50 meters, the mana doubles, Song said as they walked. At 100, where our regular patrols stop, it's 4 times the surface. And the monsters? A low roar rolled up from below. Several students stiffened. Beasts gather around crystal seams, Song went on, amused at their reaction. More mana means stronger visitors. These are not ordinary creatures either. They are abyssals, the same kind the army fights. Another ripple of nerves. Relax, Song said. We keep rotating guards down to 150 meters. Anything that wanders up gets cleared. Down here, most mana-hungry beasts are more pitiful than deadly. If you want a comparison, it is like the outer forests, though depth ramps the density faster. At 100 meters, you're only at the iron ring level outside. Safe enough. At 200, he paused. Only specialized teams go that far for a reason. They stopped in a small chamber where faint veins glimmered in the rock. Rin studied the walls. Iron here, bronze forms lower, where mana thickens. Song fielded a question about monsters while he showed how to start a clean cut. Depth creatures act like surface ones. Starve of mana, they turn hungry and mean. The difference is simple. Here there is nowhere to flee. One way up, nothing else. A deeper roar underlined the point. Rin barely heard it. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed harder, like a compass. If these drills tied into the old ruins. Some students do not fear the depths, Song added, stowing his pick. The very motivated sometimes make teams and push past the safe line. I do not recommend it. If anyone is foolish enough, go in groups. His eyes slid to the gray wing kids. Rin watched Taro chip at a seam. Even unevolved, a digger beetle was built for tunnels. If he helped Taro reach real form, he needed bronze crystals for himself, too. More than that, he needed a partner. Song handed out kits, small picks, basic detectors, collection bags. Professor, a girl asked, do we keep what we find? Yes, he said. Anything you extract on your own in the designated zones counts. No family purse. No off-limits tunnels. He added a dry smile. Most of you will not need to dig that deep. After first year, these caves are mostly picked clean anyway. The hint was for the rich kids. Next week we start proper excavations, Song said as they turned back. Review crystallization patterns. Rin did the math. The ruins had to sit below 200 meters beyond the patrols. Risky, but with the right map and timing. He only needed a way down without being seen. Back at the building, Song dismissed them. The corridors split into moving streams of students. No more classes? Rin asked. Lu, Taro called up to their roommate. Where is everyone going? Lu joined them. His nightbat a smudge on his shoulder. Right. You knew. The day ends early. Early, Min said. The academy expects initiative, Lu said, steering them down the hall. He stopped at two towering doors. The library. Rose climbed several stories, sections labeled by beast lineages. Classes finish early, so you can learn the stacks or start gathering, Lu said, leading them in. Study techniques tailored to your beasts, or head to the practice zones for materials. Your choice. The rich kids camp here, he added, nodding at a group already spreading out of prime tables. They buy what they need and load up on theory. And us? Min asked. We split it, Lu said. Some hours in books, some in the tunnels. We cannot waste chances. Rin glanced at the fungi and spore shelves. Smaller than most. The library sorts by rank, Lu said. Basics below, advanced above. He eyed the glow in Rin's hair. In your case, I will start with basics, Rin said. The mushrooms throbbed once, as if disagreeing. For today, 1 hour here, Lu checked the clock, then food, then a look at the gathering zones. The first days are rough. Easy seems go fast. Min drifted to water serpent manuals. Taro hovered between insects and terrestrial beasts. The academy teaches in class, Lu said, pulling a bat treatise, but what you do after class is what decides how far you go. He smiled. Use the time.
Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If there's a novel you'd love to hear more of, you can support us on Patreon or Ko-fi. Depending on your tier, I'll make extra parts just for the stories you're most excited about. Usually I can only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel, but with your support, we can go beyond that. And of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. It helps more than you know.
The academy expects us to be independent. Lu continued while searching for a book for his bat. Classes are important, but what you do with your free time. He smiled. That's what really determines your success here. Rin nodded, understanding. It was a system designed to reward initiative and personal effort. Though the real knowledge was already in his head and surely wouldn't be in any book, at least he could accompany his roommates and learn how others had tried to cultivate creatures like his. After a while of studying, the boys went to eat. The iron dining hall occupied much of the first floor. It wasn't an unpleasant place, clean floors, well-maintained wooden tables, wide windows, but compared to the other dining halls visible from there, it's part of the incentive system, Lou explained when he joined them at the table. From here you can see the bronze dining hall, and from there you can see the silver one. Rin observed his plate: white rice, boiled vegetables, and a small portion of meat. The food was adequate. The ingredients seemed of good quality, but the preparation was deliberately simple. They could make it taste better. Lou pointed with his chopsticks toward the other dining sections. But then, what motivation would you have to rise in rank? At least it's nutritious, Rin sighed while eating. As a cook's son, he could notice the lack of spices and the slightly overcooked point. Hey, it's better than having to make and pay for it ourselves. Though I do miss the taste of salt. Little pupil. The cheerful voice made several heads turn. Professor Lin advanced between tables, attracting looks wherever she passed. It wasn't common to see teachers in the iron dining hall, especially one so attractive. Oh, Lou dropped his chopsticks. This is interesting. What is? Asked Run as Lin approached. Master Lin never comes here. Lou lowered his voice. She's something of a legend in the academy. A legend? Min leaned in, interested. Her beast got stuck at bronze 1. A shame, but her combat technique is incredible. They say she can defeat even masters with silver beasts in controlled duels. That's why she keeps her position here despite. Despite what? Asked Taro. Politics in the academy are complicated, Lou observed as Lin approached. Normally, a master with a beast of such low rank would be. Lin stopped at their table. Lou stopped talking. Oh no, she murmured, seeing Ren's half-empty plate. No. You need to eat more than that. She sat beside them, ignoring the surprised whispers. How do you expect to develop muscles with that miserable portion of meat? No. You need at least triple. Professor. Ren blushed when she started filling his plate with more food. Students at nearby tables watched the scene in amazement. Some had even stopped mid-bite. The food here is, Ren began, simple, bland, graceless. Lin smiled. Of course it is. But, she pinched his cheek while serving him more, you need the energy for my training. Nearby students watched open-mouthed. Professor Lin, sitting with the gray-wing students, personally serving food to the mushroom boy. Taro looked nervously around. Shouldn't we go to the mine after this? To get crystals for cultivation. Oh, he'll have time for that. Lin smiled while watching Rin eat every bite. After I'm done with him. Professor, Lou bowed respectfully. It's an honor. He blushed. Master Lin gives the best combat advice in the academy, Lou explained, glancing at the others. Though normally, she only helps older students who've proven their worth. Oh, but this little one proved something today. Lin ruffled Ren's hair, making the mushrooms glow. You don't see someone use pure knowledge to defeat a technically superior opponent every day. The whispers intensified. Though first, she pushed another plate toward Run. We need to work on your physical endurance. I can't have a student who faints after one fight. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed nervously as she kept filling his plate. For some reason, her playful smile scared him more than all of Kai's blows. Professor, Min asked, fascinated by the whole situation, is it true you once defeated a silver beast master? Oh, that old story. Lin sighed theatrically. Just luck. And the poor man was distracted by, well, that doesn't matter. What matters, her smile turned predatory as she looked at Run, is that our little expert needs to learn that knowledge without technique is like a knife without an edge. But first, she pushed a third plate toward Run. Eat. Everything. You're going to need the energy for what's coming. Lin's smile promised a training hell, but for some reason, Rin couldn't help smiling too. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt he'd found someone who truly saw his potential. Is this the training field? Rin observed the secluded area behind the gray wing while holding his enormous belly. It was a simple but functional space, with packed earth ground and some basic equipment. The main fields are more impressive. Lin smiled while stretching. But here we'll have privacy. First things first, we need to build a solid foundation. Aren't we going to practice combat techniques? With those noodle arms? Lynn shook her head. Your spore gives you 10% more strength, right? But 10% of almost nothing is still almost nothing. She approached a pile of logs. Most students depend too much on their beasts. A spirit tiger can give 30% more strength, but if the base body is weak, like me, Ren lowered his gaze. Like you now, Lynn corrected. But that's going to change. You're going to train until that 10% really means something better than another 30%. Vomiting is forbidden. The next minutes were a succession of basic exercises, push-ups, squats, running. Nothing spectacular, nothing magical. Just the fundamental work needed to build a stronger body and prevent food from escaping his stomach. Technique will come later, Lynn explained while correcting his posture. First, you need the strength to execute it properly. By the time they finished, Run could barely stand. The mushrooms in his hair glowed faintly, as if they too were exhausted. Same place, tomorrow after classes. Lynn threw him a towel. And Run. Yes, this is just the beginning. Ren barely managed to drag himself back to the gray wing. Each step to the room was torture, and when he finally reached his bedroom, he only had strength to collapse on his bed. He didn't know how long he slept until the door noise woke him. The pain in every muscle reminded him of Lynn's brutal training. It was better than expected. Min's voice came from the hallway. Thanks for showing us the best spots, Lou. The deposits near the surface are the easiest to identify, replied Lou as they entered. The trick is recognizing the crystallization pattern in the rock. With time, you'll learn to distinguish promising veins from depleted ones. Oh, you're awake, Taro noticed Run. How was training? Can't move anything without it hurting. Run tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Just basic exercises, though they didn't feel so basic after the first hour. How did it go in the mines? He asked, trying to divert attention from his pitiful state. Lou taught us the basics. Min dumped his bag on his desk. I got 10 iron crystals. They're not very big, but for the first day. 12, Taro smiled, showing his own collection. Though they're quite small. Lou displayed his findings more calmly. 15 iron crystals and 1 bronze. Experience helps identify the best veins. Though don't get too excited, Lou began organizing his findings. Crystals are just the beginning. For a complete cultivation, you need processing materials and sealants, for example. He listed components, each more expensive than the last. To process your snake's crystals, he pointed them in, you'll need maybe marine coral extract and moon algae. For the final sealing, probably mermaid scales. He turned to Taro. And your beetle will require metal powder or mana-rich earth from the depths for processing. For sealing, you might need pulverized magical obsidian crystals. He began listing other possible components and their costs. For processing, you'll need those specific materials according to your beast. And the final sealing. He shook his head. That's usually even more expensive. Actually, Rin sat up with difficulty. Processing can be simpler than you think. Oh, really? Lou arched an eyebrow, his tone between amused and skeptical. Min snake is a freshwater one, not a sea one. It will only need night water lily extract, not marine coral or moon algae. And Taro's crystals. He looked at his companion. Only need to be processed under the correct moon's light. It's just the final sealing that will be more complicated. Only moonlight. Lou gave a short laugh. The records are quite clear about processing requirements. Centuries of research. The records also said the beetle couldn't pass bronze, muttered Taro, remembering the morning class. Lou shook his head with both amusement and pity. I understand you want to help, but processing isn't something you can simplify like that. Each component has its function. My beetle does respond better at night. Taro intervened thoughtfully. Even the books mention its nocturnal nature. A beast's nature is one thing, Lou sighed, and crystal processing is quite another. But I suppose, he looked at the mushrooms in Ren's hair, that after what the guys told me about your demonstration today and being trained by Professor Lin, you're entitled to some peculiar theories. Ren held back a smile. The real challenge wouldn't be processing. The correct moonlight was free, after all. The real problem would be getting the sealant for the final evolution in 100 days. As I see things, Lou begins storing his crystals. It will be an interesting semester, though I suggest focusing on proven methods before experimenting with alternative theories. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed softly. He didn't expect them to believe him immediately, especially Lou, who had spent a year studying traditional methods. But when Taro's beetle evolved correctly, Taro looked at his crystals thoughtfully. After seeing Ren defeat Kai using knowledge no one else seemed to have, maybe alternative methods were worth considering. By the way, Min changed topics while storing his crystals. What other exercises did Master Lin make you do? Ren groaned, the mere memory making his muscles protest. I'd rather not talk about that. The next morning, Ren stopped in front of the crystal processing classroom. Wei taught 2 classes, and although the professor had been clear about the bet, he wasn't sure if he meant both classes. When he entered, the kids' laughter started immediately. Look who came. Jean smiled from his seat. Didn't the expert have anything better to do? Wei stopped his explanation about processing methods, raising an eyebrow at seeing Ren. Ah, Mr. Patender. Wei smiled with false cordiality. I didn't expect to see you here. Shouldn't you be busy preparing your demonstration? His voice dripped with amusement. I thought I should attend to make sure anyway. Nonsense. Wei waved a hand dismissively. The bet included both classes, right? Asked Ren, ignoring the giggles. Of course. As I said yesterday, you have much to do helping Mr. Taro with his beast and preparing for your other classes. Wei smiled with false kindness. Don't worry about attendance. You'll have it perfect if you win the bet. And if you lose, his smile turned sharp. Well, attendance will be the least of your problems. So you could go awa. He stopped, correcting himself with exaggerated courtesy. Retire quietly to work on it. Ren nodded slowly and left the classroom. The laughter increased as he left. He could hear someone comment, did he really think he could come? Before the door closed. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed while he considered his options. Free time before battle class. The library wouldn't be much help, at least not in beast topics. Most texts just repeated the same limited information. And Omei's economics class was fascinating. For now, he had all the basic concepts clear, so the library was excluded for today. I could take advantage to collect some crystals, he thought while heading toward the practice mines. If I start now, before other students finish their classes. Oh, but look what we have here. Ren froze mid-step. That cheerful voice. I could take advantage to collect some crystals, Ren thought while heading toward the practice mines. If I start now, before other students finish their classes. Oh, but look what we have here. Ren froze mid-step. That cheerful voice. My favorite student. Lin appeared from nowhere, practically materializing in front of him. What are you doing wandering the halls at this hour? Shouldn't you be in class? Professor Wei gave me permission to free time. Lin's eyes sparkled with a joy that made Ren instinctively step back. What a coincidence. I have this hour free too. Actually, I was going to the mines to exercise. Lin grabbed his arm. How dedicated. I was just thinking you needed more work on your core endurance. No, I meant to collect CRYS. Excellent idea. Lin began dragging him in the opposite direction from the mines. We'll collect muscles. Though, she pinched his arm. First we need to find them. Where did you hide them, little one? Professor, I really need to get some materials. Oh, you also need to get some endurance. And look, we have all morning to work on it. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed with what seemed like resignation while Lin dragged him toward the training field, humming cheerfully. You know, Lin smiled while opening the field door. I think today we'll focus on leg exercises. Since you seem so eager to go to the mines, I'll help you prepare for all that walking. Ren sighed. Apparently, the universe had other plans for his free morning. Very painful plans. Come on, one last set. Lin smiled while Ren struggled to complete another series of exercises. Every muscle protested from the previous day's training. The push-ups that were already difficult had become almost impossible. Can't. Ren panted, his arms shaking. Oh, Lin crouched beside him. Does the little expert give up so easily? After beating a boy with stone scales. That was different. True. That was luck and knowledge. She pinched his cheek. This is hard work. Which would you prefer backing you up next time? All of them. Rin tried another push-up, but his arms gave way. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed weakly, as if they too were exhausted. Lin watched him struggle a moment longer before sighing theatrically. All right. I suppose I've been a bit cruel. She pulled another green pill from her pocket. Here, this will help with recovery. More magic pills? Nothing magical, just my basic fatigue medicine. She winked. Can't have my student dying on his second day, right? As the pill's effect spread through his body, Lin helped him complete the last exercises. The pain didn't disappear completely, but at least now he could move without wanting to scream. Just in time, Lin heard the bell. Time for battle class. Can I take a break? After I gave you a pill? She dragged him toward the main field. Besides, today is special core training for everyone. The main field was already full when they arrived. Yang watched as students organized themselves in rows. After yesterday's evaluations, he announced, it's clear most need basic strength work. Powerful beasts are useless without a solid foundation. The exercises that followed were similar to those Lin had made him do, but Rin was already exhausted before starting. Look at the rotting boy, someone whispered when Rin stumbled during an exercise. Already tired? What did you expect? Another answer between laughs. With that pathetic spore, less talk, more movement. Lin passed between the rows, correcting postures. When she reached Run, she murmured, don't mind them. They're only doing the exercise once. Rin nodded, understanding. While others started fresh, he had 2 training sessions under his belt. It wasn't that he couldn't do it, he was working triple. Pattender, Yang called when Rin failed another exercise. Was yesterday's victory luck after all? More laughter. But Rin noticed something in Yang's voice. It wasn't mockery. It was a test. No, Professor. He stood up, legs shaking. I'm just working harder than the rest. Harder? Jean sneered from his row. Is that what you call being pathetic? Continue. Yang ordered, silencing everyone, but Rin caught a slight smile on his face. As class progressed, Rin kept pace through pure determination. Lin was right. If he wanted to compete at his best, he needed to work harder than everyone else. His spore gave him knowledge, but the body to use it that he would have to earn. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed stronger, as if approving his resolution. The laughter and mockery continued, but now they felt distant, irrelevant. It didn't matter what they said. They only saw the present. He was building his future, one aching muscle at a time. Wasn't so bad. Lin smiled as students left the training field. You just need to build more endurance. Ren, still panting, looked at her incredulously. Oh, and about mornings, Lin began collecting training equipment. Since a certain professor gave you free time, we'll continue with the routine. But she raised a finger at Ren's horrified expression. You can dedicate afternoons to collecting crystals. Really? Of course. We'll have night training, but it'll be lighter just to maintain the improvement pace. Her playful smile returned. And I always have more recovery pills. Ren didn't know whether to feel relieved or worried, though the promise of another pill a day's end was tempting. May's history class proved surprisingly basic. While the professor explained the formation of the first cities and their relationship with low mana concentration zones, Ren found he already knew most of the material. His old father had liked to tell him all sorts of things. The first cities were established in areas where mana was low enough to keep powerful beasts away, May explained. That's why our city is where it is. The mana here isn't enough to maintain even iron-rank beasts without cultivation. And that's why the ruins under the academy are so interesting, thought Run while his mushrooms pulsed. A place with dense mana under a naturally mana-poor zone. Finally came the crystals gathering class. Song handed out their mining equipment. Small but sturdy picks, basic mana detectors, and special bags for crystals. Ren, Min called him as they headed to the caves. Lu taught us some tricks yesterday. Want us to show you. Finally came the crystals gathering class. Song handed out their mining equipment. Small but sturdy picks, basic mana detectors, and special bags for crystals. Ren, Min called him as they headed to the caves. Lu taught us some tricks yesterday. Want us to show you? Crystals near the surface usually form specific patterns, explained Taro as they descended. Lou says you have to look for lines that cross at 60-degree angles. He also taught us to distinguish between mature and premature crystals, added Min, pointing to a vein in the wall. See how the color is more intense in the center? That means it's ready for extraction. Rin watched, fascinated. The knowledge flowing through his mushrooms confirmed what they were saying, but added details, how the crystal's arrangement indicated their purity, how mana lines converged at specific points. And most importantly, Taro lowered his voice. He showed us how to avoid unstable zones. Some tunnels look safe, but a distant cracking sound emphasized his words. Lou says accidents are common among overeager novices. Min shuddered. That's why it's better to work in groups, at least at first. Rin wasn't too worried about that. With the right knowledge, even these surface veins could be more productive than they appeared. Shall we start here? He suggested, pointing to a spot where mana lines subtly intersected. His companions couldn't see them, but they trusted his judgment after recent events. As they began working, Rin couldn't help but smile. Between Lin's brutal training and gathering with his companions, maybe this new rhythm of life wouldn't be so bad. Though his muscles immediately protested when lifting the pick, reminding him that the light night training was still to come. A while later, the boys gained confidence to disperse and dig in deeper places. At 50 meters below the entrance, Rin examined the tunnel wall attentively. Despite it being his first day mining, his movements were surprisingly precise. Another one. Min watched in disbelief as Rin extracted a good-sized crystal. That's the fifth in half an hour. Are you sure you hadn't mined before? Taro set down his pick, frustrated. We were supposed to have the advantage from the extra time yesterday with Lou. It's just observation. Rin pointed to a pattern in the rock. See how the lines cross here? Where energy converges like this, there are usually crystals behind. How do you know all that? Min narrowed his eyes. I can't see anything you're talking about. It's cheating to have so much knowledge. You know pretty strange things, like knowing Kai's scale defects, added Taro, though he smiled saying it. Footsteps interrupted them. Klein Goldcrest passed nearby, his golden lion manifesting in brilliant fur covering his arms. As always, he was heading toward where Luna worked. Luna was in the deepest section of the allowed zone, her shadow wolf making the darkest veins glow with a spectral radiance. Unlike most who worked in groups, she mined alone, each movement precise and elegant even in this mundane task. It's almost unfair, Min murmured as they watch her work. Her wolf can detect mana concentrations we can't even see. It's more than that, Rin observed, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing while analyzing her technique. Look how she strikes at specific angles. She doesn't waste a single movement. Luna, Klein's voice echoed in the tunnel. The Goldcrest family heir approached. Luna, his voice resonated in the tunnel again. I found an exceptional vein over here. If you want, we could. I'm busy. Luna's sharp response echoed from the darkness. How pathetic. Jin's voice came from another tunnel above Rin's. The Goldcrest heir begging for attention again. Klein turned, furious. Shut up. I don't want to talk to someone with a mediocre beast like yours. Why don't you come up here and we'll discuss it? Maned Kitten. Enough. Luna's cold voice cut the tension. Some of us are trying to work. Both retreated, exchanging murderous glances. As I was saying, Rin continued once they'd gone, there are patterns in how mana forms. Crystals are usually found where. Look out. A small avalanche of rocks fell near them. Jean smiled from the upper level. Oops, how clumsy of me. His smile turned cruel. But the rotting boy should know all about things falling to the bottom, right? Is there a problem? Min stepped forward, his water snake materializing. Not for now, Jean shrugged. Just make sure to look up while you work. You never know when there might be another accident. When Jean left, Taro picked up his pick with trembling hands. Maybe we should find another section. No, Rin studied the wall. This vein is too good to abandon. Besides, he smiled slightly. It would be a shame to give that idiot the satisfaction, don't you think? Min and Taro exchanged glances before smiling too. Jean could threaten all he wanted, but they needed those crystals. Besides, the professor wouldn't let them get into too much trouble. Did I hear cave-ins? Is anyone hurt? Professor Song's voice cut through the air. Jean smiled innocently and walked away. When Jean disappeared through the upper tunnel, Ren went back to examining the vein they were working. There's something else that worries me, he began while extracting another crystal. Have you noticed how some tunnels up there had fewer crystals than yesterday? Now that you mention it, Taro observed the upper walls. The areas where Lu taught us yesterday are almost empty. Mana takes time to regenerate veins, explained Ren. That's why most focus on intensive mining at the start of the year. By the time crystals form again after the holidays, most will move on to focus on other classes soon. How long do we have? Asked Min. A month, maybe 2 before it becomes significantly harder to find good crystals. Ren stored another crystal in his bag. That's why we need to take advantage of every moment now. How long do we have? Asked Min. A month, maybe 2 before it becomes significantly harder to find good crystals. Ren stored another crystal in his bag, feeling the weight of time pressing down on them. That's why we need to take advantage of every moment now. Well, I can take my time. Min shrugged, his water snake coiling lazily around his shoulders. I prefer to study more before trying to evolve my snake. But Taro needs the crystals soon, Ren reminded him, thinking of their upcoming demonstration. And it's not just cultivation crystals. We need enough to buy processing and sealing materials. You'll need them too, and it'll be good to have crystals saved up. At least it will be cheaper for me with your method. Taro smiled, his digger beetle creating faint patterns on his skin. Hope you're right too. After all, you have a bet to win. Ren nodded, though his thoughts went much further. 100 bronze crystals, equivalent to 1,000 of these small ones if exchanged at school. And that was just the beginning. The bronze rank beast parts he'd need for his own evolution would be even more expensive. Not to mention the poisonous fungi of the same rank. The numbers were staggering when he really thought about them. Run! Min waved a hand in front of his face, his snake mimicking the motion. We lost you for a moment. Just thinking, Ren refocused on the vein. We should organize better. Work in shifts. Take advantage of every free hour. Don't you think you're being a bit? It's not just about the bet, Ren interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of knowledge he couldn't fully share. Sealing materials are expensive, and once these veins are depleted, getting enough crystals to buy them will be much harder. Taro looked worried, his beetle's markings darkening with his mood. How many will we need for the final sealing? Ren made mental calculations, remembering the precise requirements. Probably equivalent to 10,000 iron rank mine crystals just for the basic materials. Min whistled, his snake curling tighter around his neck. And that's just for Taro's beetle. What about your evolution? Are you thinking of cultivating that expensive fungus they say isn't worth it? Ren pretended to concentrate on mining to avoid the question. That variation they created with strength runes was terrible, but how could he explain that he needed 10 times what Taro needed, but for something else? Better to keep that worry to himself for now. Let's focus on one thing at a time, he said finally, watching the mana pattern swirl in the rock. For now, we need to take advantage while the veins are still rich. We should explore deeper tomorrow, he suggested, pointing to another promising pattern that shimmered just at the edge of visibility, where fewer students dare to go. Lu warned us about going too far down. Min looked nervous, his snake's scales rippling uneasily. He said tunnels can become unstable and there are things moving in the darkness. Just a little deeper, Ren insisted, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing with reassurance. Besides, we'll be together. His companions nodded and returned to work. The rhythmic sound of picks against rock filled the tunnel, while each considered the challenge ahead of them. To evolve a beast, you needed 3 things: crystals, processing materials, and sealing materials. And getting them all before the veins were depleted, one step at a time, thought Ren while extracting another crystal, watching the mana flow through the stone. First help Taro, then. His gaze drifted toward the deeper tunnels, where mana was denser. There, where few dared to go. Perhaps he'd find what he needed for his own evolution. But for now, every small crystal counted. Time was running, and the veins wouldn't wait for anyone. 16 crystals today. Min proudly dumped his bag on the desk, the crystals catching the light like trapped stars. 18, Taro smiled, showing his collection arranged in neat rows. 3 bronze and 19 iron. Rin added his to the pile, each crystal carefully extracted from the precise spots where mana lines converged. Not bad for beginners, Elu. Lu observed the crystals with genuine surprise, his night bat fluttering closer to inspect them. Not bad at all, though I don't understand how you found so many bronze crystals. Later, after night training with Lin, Rin barely managed to drag himself to bed. Every muscle ached with the day's efforts, but it was a satisfying kind of pain. You know, Lu spoke from his desk, his bat casting shadows in the lamplight. I admire you. With such a terrible beast, most would have given up by now. But you keep pushing, even harder than the rest. Rin smiled in the darkness. If Lu only knew that his spore wasn't as terrible as everyone thought. The days began to blend into a routine, each one building on the last. The mornings Wei left free became torture sessions with Lin, each exercise pushing Rin's limits further than he thought possible. Battle classes with Yang were another kind of pain, but Rin could feel his body gradually strengthening, the 10% boost from his spore becoming more meaningful as his base strength increased. Professor May alternated between history, economics, and life, a surprisingly useful class about everything from paying taxes, making fire, and etiquette to negotiating with merchants. Crystal class became more technical, but the real learning came afterward in the deep parts of the mines where the mana patterns told stories few could read. Lu began joining them after classes, apparently intrigued by their success in finding good deposits. His experience added another layer to their mining expeditions, though he still couldn't quite believe some of Ren's theories. Nights ended with more training with Lin, though now Ren could stay standing a bit longer before collapsing, each day bringing small but noticeable improvements. Thus passed almost a month. The routine was exhausting but productive. His muscles strengthened, his crystal collection grew, and slowly but surely, the respect of his companions grew with it. But tomorrow was different. As he prepared for sleep, Ren mentally reviewed the necessary steps. Tomorrow they would process Taro's crystals. The lunar phase would be perfect, and everything they'd worked for during this month would be put to the test. He just needed to bring the processed bronze-rank crystal he'd gotten from the school's exchange shop and make the most of the time window. Tomorrow would truly begin his demonstration that the knowledge he possessed was real. Nervous about tomorrow? Asked Taro from his bed. No. Rin smiled in the darkness, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing softly with certainty. Everything will go exactly as it should. Lu snorted from his corner, but said nothing. Soon he would see that some crazy theories held more truth than he believed. Are you finished already? Lin watched in surprise as Rin completed the last series of morning exercises without his usual gasping. The training field was empty except for them, as it had been every morning for the past month. But something was different today. It seems the pills have helped more than I expected, Lin murmured, studying her student with professional interest. His recovery is remarkable. It was true. The exercises that once left him on the verge of collapse were now, though still challenging, manageable. A month of constant training and recovery pills had transformed his endurance. Well, Lin smiled, an expression Rin had learned to fear. I suppose it's time to move to the next level. Next level, we can finally begin with some real technique. Lin positioned herself in front of him. Until now, we've just been building your physical foundation. But now that you can move without looking like a newborn kitten, she moved into a stance Rin didn't recognize. Technique is more than just strength, she explained. It's understanding how to use your body efficiently. Watch. Her movement was so fluid that Rin could barely follow it. In an instant, she was in front of him. In the next, she had twisted in a way that seemed to defy gravity and appeared behind him. Your spore only gives you 10% more strength, she continued. But with proper training and technique, you can make that 10% worth much more. For the next hour, Lin guided him through basic movements. How to position his feet, how to distribute weight, how to use an opponent's momentum. Most students depend too much on their beasts, she explained while correcting his posture. They think a 30% or 50% increase in strength makes them invincible. But technique. She moved again, this time more slowly, so Ren could observe. Technique can overcome brute force. It's what's kept me as a teacher here, even with my crane stuck in bronze. Ren tried to replicate the movement, stumbling in the process. I don't expect you to master it today. Lin laughed while helping him up. But at least now you have the endurance to practice without hurting yourself so easily. As they continued practicing, Ren noticed that the movements, though somewhat complex, weren't as exhausting as he'd expected. A month ago, simply maintaining the stance would have left him drained. The pills have really worked wonders, though I suppose his determination has helped too. Not everyone gets up every time they fall for a whole month. Ren smiled, grateful for his teacher's support. His knowledge had shown him that the pills used somewhat expensive bronze-level materials that helped with muscle regeneration and energy. As thanks, he would help improve her mature beast further, show that weak beasts weren't weak, that the records were mostly wrong. And soon, with Taro's evolution, he would have the first real proof of that. Enough for today, Lin finally announced. Tomorrow we'll start working seriously on these techniques. Now that your body can keep up, we'll see how fast your mind can learn. As he headed to his next class, Ren reflected on how much had changed in a month. His muscles no longer protested with every movement. His endurance had improved significantly. And now, finally, he would begin learning real techniques. Maybe Lin was right. Tomorrow, everything would begin in earnest. But it was just the beginning. With the processing of Taro's crystals that night, soon he would have much more to work with. Battle class proceeded normally, still exercising for everyone, as did Professor May's class, which was history today. Finally, in crystal class, as you can see, Professor Song pointed at the tunnel walls. Productive veins are becoming increasingly scarce. He wasn't exaggerating. Where a month ago crystals glittered everywhere, now only dull marks remained in the rock. The few deposits that remained active were smaller and more scattered. Therefore, Song continued, we'll soon change the focus of the class. There's no point bringing you here when the veins need time to regenerate. Min raised his hand. How long does complete regeneration take? That, Song smiled, is exactly the kind of question we'll be studying. We'll move to theory of other crystal types and begin extra preparation for exterior gathering classes coming mid-next month. Several students, especially those from wealthier families, looked relieved. For them, mining expeditions have been more of a nuisance than a necessity. However, Song added, those who wish to continue practical gathering can keep using the mines. You just need to report your findings. We'll use that data for regeneration time studies like every year. After class, while most headed to the library, Run and his companions remained in the tunnels. Did you notice there are fewer guards? Taro whispered while they worked on a minor vein. It was true. The guards who previously patrolled every level now concentrated mainly at the entrances and deeper zones. Normal, Lu joined them, arriving from his own class. With fewer students in the mines, they don't need as much supervision. Most prefer studying theory to picking at rock for chromes. Ren looked around. The only ones left were students like them, those who needed every crystal they could find from less wealthy families. There was no sign of Klein or his group, and even Jean seemed to have lost interest in harassing them in the tunnels. It's better this way. Min extracted a small crystal. More space to work. And less competition for the remaining veins, added Taro. Though we'll soon have to consider deeper zones, murmured Run, studying the mana patterns. The upper levels are almost depleted. Lu frowned. Guards still watch those areas. But with less personnel, Rin pointed out. And the patrols are more predictable now. Are you suggesting? Though we'll soon have to consider deeper zones, murmured Run, studying the mana patterns. The upper levels are almost depleted. Lu frowned. Guards still watch those areas. But with less personnel, Rin pointed out. And the patrols are more predictable now. Are you suggesting? Taro began. I'm just saying we should keep our options open. Rin continued working on the vein, especially considering what we're doing tonight. The processing of Taro's crystals. The lunar phase would be perfect, and they would need sealing materials afterward. At least now, we'll have more freedom to move. Min observed the almost deserted tunnel, with everyone concentrated in the library. Rich students can afford to buy their materials with what their parents send. Lu shook his head. Those like us have to dig to buy ours. But don't forget that studying is important to pass the exams to the next rank. Look at me. Instead of coming to study, it seems I came to dig. The reduction in guards and students could be an advantage, especially when they needed to explore deeper to obtain extra materials. But for now, they had to focus on tonight. Rin smiled to himself. The veins might be depleting, but there were still things to obtain. It's almost time, Rin whispered as he rose from his bed. Last training of the day with Lin had been brutal as always, but this night was too important to rest. It was the moment he had been waiting for. We'll accompany you. Taro was already ready, holding his crystal bag. It's not necessary. You should sleep. I can do it alone. Don't even try. Lu also stood up. You've been bragging about your special method for a month. I won't miss the chance to see if you really know what you're talking about. Min stirred in his bed. A yawn interrupted his protest. I also want. Seconds later, his snores filled the room. That one can't stay awake past 10. Like a small child, Lu murmured as they silently left the dormitory. The night air was cool as they headed toward the academy outskirts. Rin guided them to a clearing where trees didn't obstruct the sky view. Here, he decided after studying the area, the moonlight will reach without interference. The sky shone with just over half its moons visible. Rin knew he needed exactly 8. The configuration would change soon. Some would hide in minutes while others would emerge on the horizon. Help me with this. He spread a long board on the ground. He began methodically examining Taro's crystals. Each piece was studied carefully before being placed or discarded. This one's too small, he murmured, replacing one. This other has an irregular surface. We need the best quality possible. Does it really matter that much? Asked Taro, while watching Rin reorganize the crystals with others he'd obtained from the mines. It must be big enough to reduce from 150 to 100 days. Rin continued his selection until he had exactly 100 crystals arranged in 10 perfect rows. He covered the crystals with a black cloth, protecting them from premature light. Then he took out something that made Lu lean forward with interest, a bronze crystal, flat and curved. Is that a neutral crystal lens? Cost me 500 crystals despite just being a bronze crystal carved and processed with cheap materials, confirmed Rin while testing it, adjusting until he managed to concentrate the moonlight into a bright point. Satisfied with the test, he began studying the sky intently. How long? Lu began. As long as necessary. Rin interrupted without taking his eyes from the sky. The configuration must be exact. Minutes passed. Lu began showing signs of impatience, but Taro watched his friend's concentration with fascination. Finally, something changed in Rin's expression. It's time, he murmured, removing the black cloth. The 100 crystals glowed faintly under the night light as he positioned the lens. The next hours would prove if a month of preparation had been worth it. The concentrated moonlight formed a bright, intense point. He took the first crystal and exposed it to the light beam. The crystal began to glow with an intensity that made Lu tense. Stop! Lu stepped forward alarmed. Do you see the glow? It's processing too much mana. Rin was already storing the glowing crystal in the black bag and taking the next one. Run! This is dangerous. Lu continued while Ren repeated the process with more crystals. Mana poisoning is no joke. Medicine is expensive, and if Taro has to go to the infirmary 3 days in a row, professors will start asking questions. Maybe even 2 consecutive days would be suspicious, he insisted. Do you have any idea how much mana they're absorbing? They're exactly at the right limit. Rin didn't stop his work, keeping a mental count of exposure time. And I need to concentrate. This specific lunar configuration will only last 30 minutes before the next moon hides. Is that why you bought the lens? Taro watched the process, fascinated. If we don't concentrate the light, we'd have to wait 2 more months to get the equivalent of 36 minutes of exposure per crystal. We wouldn't have time to start your cultivation and finish before the end of the semester. So, Lou opened his mouth to protest again, but Taro calmed him with a gesture. I have over 600 crystals saved thanks to this month in the mines, he reasoned. Most I found following Ren's directions. If something goes wrong, we simply discard the method on the second day, and I lose only 100 crystals. Ren continued working methodically. The first crystals received exactly 36 seconds of exposure, but he gradually reduced the time. The resonance is already established in the moon group, he explained without stopping work. The next ones need less time because they've been exposed to the same moon's light while waiting, though not concentrated. His movements were precise, each crystal placed exactly at the lens's focal point. The last ones barely needed 6 or 7 seconds of exposure. How do you know it's enough? Asked Lou, watching the crystals glow with an intensity that still seemed dangerous to him. Because, Ren paused for a moment, considering how much and how to explain. The absorption patterns are clear when you know what to look for. Finally, the last crystal went into the bag. Ren began collecting the equipment quickly, aware they'd already spent too much time outside the dormitory. That's all, he announced, securing the bag. Let's return before someone notices our absence. As they returned through the academy's dark grounds, Lou couldn't stop looking at the bag with evident concern. For him, each crystal there was a time bomb, overcharged with mana and ready to wreak havoc in Taro's system. Taro, for his part, showed more curiosity than concern. After seeing Ren defeat Kai and find the best veins in the mines for a month, he was willing to trust his strange knowledge once more. The first day of the 100 that would determine the success or failure of Ren's method had begun, and with it, the first real proof that his knowledge about beasts was more than just crazy theory. Dawn was barely breaking, the first hints of light creeping through the dormitory windows, when Ren carefully extracted a small package from his bag. The early morning silence was broken only by his roommate's soft breathing and the distant calls of morning birds. While his companions slept peacefully, unaware of what was to come, he measured out a precise amount of black powder, deep earth that he had been discreetly collecting at the limit of the permitted zone. The powder seemed to absorb even the weak pre-dawn light, appearing more like a void than a substance. It was a rare and difficult material to find, earth that had managed to absorb mana without transferring it to nearby crystal deposits. At the depths they were allowed to reach, it was truly challenging to locate. But Ren's knowledge had made the task considerably easier, showing him exactly where to look and how to identify the genuine article among similar-looking but useless samples. The deep earth was the perfect sealing agent for Taro's beetle, though this detail appeared in none of the books his friend had so diligently studied. Ren could recall seeing Taro poring over tome after tome in the library, searching for information that had been right in front of him but misinterpreted by generations of scholars. Lou had mentioned deep earth as a necessary component for some earth beasts, but he had incorrectly associated it with processing rather than sealing. It seemed to have been pure luck and coincidence that he'd mentioned it at all. He could have perhaps used Lou's argument to make it easier for Taro to accept, but he knew Taro read several books about his beast. Therefore, to avoid further discussions and potential interference, Ren had decided to keep this step secret. The fewer questions asked about his methods at this stage, the better. Under the protection of his sheets, he worked with surgical precision. Each grain of the black powder was measured exactly, his movements careful and deliberate. The crystal they had processed with moonlight the previous night reacted immediately upon contact with the black powder, its glow gradually shifting until it acquired an earthy brown tone. The transformation was fascinating to watch. The crystal's inner light seemed to pulse and swirl as it absorbed the powder's properties, like watching soil dissolve into clear water, but in reverse. This was the kind of subtle interaction that the books missed entirely, focusing instead on dramatic reactions and flashy transformations. When Taro began to stir, showing the first signs of waking, Ren had already completed the crystal's preparation. The timing was perfect. Any longer and the sealing might have been too strong, any shorter and it might not have taken properly. Good morning, he smiled, holding the finished crystal. Your first crystal is ready. Ah, yes, yes, of course, Taro mumbled, still half asleep. Here, Rin extended the glowing crystal to a barely awake Taro, who accepted it with sleep-heavy hands. Still drowsy and trusting, Taro took the crystal without examining its brown glow too closely. After all, he had decided to put his faith in his friend. With a yawn, he activated the absorption process. For a moment, nothing happened. The room remained still, the early morning light casting long shadows across the floor. Then, the mana began to flow. Taro's eyes flew wide open as the first wave of power coursed through him. It was more intense than he had expected, far more potent than the practice crystals he had used before. The sensation was like plunging into icy water, shocking, overwhelming, yet somehow invigorating. Another wave hit, stronger than the first. And another, and another. Each pulse of power seemed to build on the last, creating a cascading effect that made Taro's entire body hum with energy. This is, Taro gasped as the power continued to surge. It's too much. Lu leaped from his bed the moment he saw Taro's veins begin to glow with an unmistakable blue radiance, the telltale sign of mana poisoning. The blue lines traced patterns under his skin like rivers of light. What have you done? Lu lunged toward Run, panic evident in his voice. I told you they were overcharged. Look at his veins. The blue lines were spreading rapidly across Taro's arms, who now struggled for breath. The mana flowed uncontrolled through his system, far too much for his body to process normally. Each pulse made the glow brighter, more intense. We need to get him to the infirmary. Lu was already searching frantically for his shoes. Mana poisoning medicine is expensive, but if he doesn't get it soon... Wait. Rin maintained his composure, though his eyes never left Taro. His calm seemed almost unnatural in the face of such danger. Wait. He's having massive poisoning because of you. Min had also awakened to the commotion and watched the scene with growing concern, his water snake coiling anxiously around his arm. Just, Rin raised a hand. Wait one more moment. Taro's veins now shone with increasing intensity. His breathing had become erratic, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Every sign pointed to a severe case of mana poisoning. Easy, Rin gripped Taro's shoulders firmly. Breathe with me. Slowly. The mana, Taro panted, the blue lines pulsing brilliantly beneath his skin. It's a lot, I know. Rin's voice remained calm, controlled. But your beetle can handle it. You just need to guide it correctly. Lu watched from the door, torn between running for help and the strange certainty in Rin's demeanor. Feel the flow, Rin continued. Notice how it's pooling in your chest. You need to move it. Make it circulate to your arms first. Taro nodded weakly, focusing on the sensation. Slowly, the blue lines in his arms began to fade as he directed the energy. Good. Now, let some flow toward your back. Your beetle is an earth creature. The mana should feel more natural flowing downward. Min held his breath as he watched the blue lines shift and gradually weaken, following Taro's control. Temporary mana excess isn't bad if you know how to control it, Rin explained while guiding Taro. Your beast is designed for this. It just needs you to help distribute it properly. Gradually, Taro's breathing normalized. The blue lines almost completely vanished, leaving only a faint glow under his skin that looked more healthy than dangerous. How do you feel? Rin asked after several minutes. It's different. Taro flexed his fingers, surprised. I feel stronger, more connected to my beetle. Is this normal? It's how it should be, Rin smiled, finally releasing his shoulders. Traditional crystals have less mana to avoid poisoning, but your beetle can handle more to shorten the period by much, as long as you guide it correctly. Lu had approached again, his expression split between amazement and skepticism. How did you know it would work? Because I know beasts better than the book suggests, Rin replied simply. And this is only the first day. Taro stood up, experimenting with his new sensation of power. Not only had he survived the apparent poisoning, he felt better than ever. The first crystal had worked exactly as Rin had planned. 99 more, and the beetle's evolution would be undeniable. As Rin headed to his morning training with Lin, Taro entered Wei's classroom with some apprehension. During the last month, the professor's behavior had been peculiar. It wasn't just that he ignored Rin's absence, he seemed to revel in it. As Taro took his usual seat, he noticed how the professor practically glowed with satisfaction at his friend's absence. Each class had become a parade of indirect jabs and examples where Rin served as the perfect antagonist. As you can see in this diagram, Wei pointed to a cultivation pattern illustration. This is how mana flows naturally in a well-cultivated beast. With this analyzed information as an argument, we can see how proven methods are superior to the unfounded theories of certain disruptive elements. It was the third reference in the first 10 minutes of class. Taro had begun keeping a mental count. The current record was 12 examples in a single session. Observe the difference between correct cultivation and one. Wei projected 2 images, contaminated by baseless ideas. The constant jokes about fungi, idea otters, and infectious theories had become daily bread. What bothered Taro most wasn't just the lack of professionalism, but how Wei used his position to influence class opinion, with countless comparisons to try to make his teachings sound more convincing. Today we'll do something different, Wei announced, finishing his diagram. I want you to form pairs to study cultivation methodologies for beasts different from your own. Sometimes, an external perspective can spark inspiration. He made a theatrical pause before adding. His smile turned malicious. Though remember to keep your minds open, but not so much that they rot. Like those theorists who end up. He made a dramatic pause, with mushrooms in their brains. The class burst into laughter. Wei had carefully cultivated this atmosphere where mocking run was the norm. Taro gripped his pencil tightly. For a respected professor, Wei was behaving more like a child with a personal vendetta. Taro observed the classroom dejectedly. He had never been particularly sociable in this class, preferring to keep to himself. Now, as a known friend of the rotting boy, the possibilities of finding a partner were even more limited. His gaze briefly met Jin's group by accident. The tiger boy, surrounded by his usual cronies, gave him a look of disgust so exaggerated it would have been comical in other circumstances. A soft touch on his shoulder startled Taro. "Can I be your partner?" Taro turned to find Luna standing beside his desk. Her expression was as unreadable as ever, but there was something in her gaze suggesting this wasn't a random choice. With me, the question came out higher-pitched than intended. Luna, the most promising student in class, wanted a pair with the rotting boy's friend. "Luna, why don't you work with me?" Klein didn't bother to hide his intentions as she passed near his seat. "My golden lion would be a much more interesting study subject than a simple beetle." Luna didn't even dignify him with a look while sitting beside Taro. Klein's golden lion manifested in his arms, the marks glowing with irritation, but she kept her attention on the study materials she was beginning to take out. "So," Taro began nervously, still bewildered at having the class's most promising student as his partner. "The digger beetle." Luna was direct, her voice barely a whisper while pretending to review a diagram. "Have you already started with the method I mentioned?" The tension in Taro's shoulders loosened a bit. Talking to a girl was something difficult for him, but this was a topic he could discuss comfortably. "Last night we processed the first crystals," he explained while they pretended to work on the assigned exercise. "Rin used a method with concentrated moonlight. And did it work?" Luna's eyes showed a flash of genuine interest. "This morning I absorbed the first crystal. It was intense." While supposedly analyzing their beast's cultivation components, Luna maintained a steady flow of precise questions. How exactly did they concentrate the light? Which moons did they use? How much exposure time? Suddenly, she stopped mid-analysis, her eyes fixed on Taro with an intensity that made him shift uncomfortably. "There's something different about you," she murmured, her shadow wolf subtly manifesting in her eyes. "Different? Your mana." Luna narrowed her eyes, studying him. "The flow patterns, they move differently in your body. My wolf can see it clearly. It's as if—" "Ah." Taro smiled slightly, understanding. "During cultivation this morning." The first crystal was processed differently, as Run said it should be. At first I thought it was mana poisoning, but interesting. Luna cut him off softly. Though she asked no more questions, Taro could feel her gaze studying him periodically, as if monitoring the changes in his mana flow. They continued with the assigned exercise. Taro, after much analysis, only managed to identify one correct component for Shadow Wolf cultivation: the specific need for night crystals to maintain its affinity with shadows. Luna, for her part, identified two elements for the beetle: the critical importance of moonlight in processing and, surprisingly, the need for deep earth. The second is incorrect, Taro pointed out, clearly remembering Ren's explanations about purely lunar processing. The method only requires a specific moonlight. Luna looked at him with a curious expression, almost confused, but didn't argue. Her eyes, still influenced by her shadow wolf, narrowed. When the exercise ended, she rose with the same silent grace with which she had arrived. Without saying another word, she returned to her seat, leaving Taro wondering if what had just happened was real. Klein tried to get her attention again when she passed, but Luna ignored him as in battle class. Gather round. Professor Yang's voice resonated across the training field, echoing off the stone walls with commanding authority. Today will increase the intensity. Ren and Min joined Taro, all of them panting from the initial exercises that were notably more demanding than the day before. Though Ren appeared remarkably fresher than them, his month of extra training with Lin showing in his improved stamina and form. Each tamer has different aptitudes in their styles. Yang walked through the student ranks, his stone behemoth's markings gleaming in the morning light. Master Lin and I have decided it's time to adapt the training according to your natural strength for the beginning of the second month. But before you ask, he smiled at seeing the confused faces, his expression knowing, we will decide which category you fit best in. Lin began moving among the students with practiced grace, pointing to different areas of the field. Her crane's feathers shimmered as she moved. Attackers with Professor Yang, she indicated, her voice carrying clear across the field. Speedsters with me. Defensive types to the east area. Range mages to the west. The field became a flurry of movement as students began shifting to their assigned areas, some looking pleased with their categorization, others less so. While the professors assigned groups, Taro edged closer to Ren. Hey, about Wei's class. Luna asked you about the method? Ren didn't even seem surprised, as if he had expected this development. Was it wrong that I told her about? No problem, Ren shrugged. You can talk openly about it. It's not like it's a secret. Besides, Luna helped me once and patented her. Lin called out to the attackers group. Strength? Several students laughed, their voices thick with mockery. The rotting boy? I'm a speed type, and I have more strength augment than him. More laughter rippled through the crowd. His strength is better than you think. Lin winked, a knowing smile playing on her lips. A month of training works wonders. Taro was assigned to the defensive group, his beetle's natural affinity for protection making him an obvious choice, while Min joined the range mages with his water snake. The class continued with specific exercises for each group. Ren discovered that, indeed, his month of training with Lin had prepared him well for the strength exercises. Each movement felt more natural, more powerful than before. By the end of the session, Yang gathered all students again, his behemoth's presence commanding attention. As you know, the final exam will include eliminating a real monster. His voice turned serious, resonating with experience. But that's only half the test. Students exchanged confused looks, whispers spreading through the crowd. A tamer must know more than just hunting beasts, he continued, his eyes scanning the gathered students. Battles against other tamers from the enemy kingdom are equally important, if not more so. Lin stepped forward. That's why we'll begin team practices next month. You have this month to form groups of 3. Can we choose anyone? Someone asked from the crowd. As long as they're maximum separated by 1 cultivation level at the time of exam, Lin confirmed, her eyes scanning the gathering. Looks began flying across the field as students mentally cataloged potential teammates. Jean was already gathering his followers, their beasts manifesting partially in excitement, while Klein seemed to gravitate toward Luna, who studied the distant mountains with pointed indifference. Ren, Taro, and Min exchanged glances. They didn't need words to know they would team up together, even if it meant facing technically stronger groups. Their month of working together in the mines had already forged a natural understanding between them. One morning, Yang's voice cut through the murmurs. Choose based on compatibility and strategy, not raw power. I've seen teams of weak beasts defeat supposedly superior groups just by having better coordination. His gaze briefly rested on Run and his friends before continuing. Remember, you have a month to practice together and choose. Use that time wisely. As the students dispersed, Rin couldn't help but smile. An attacker, a defender, and a range mage. Maybe they weren't the strongest team, but they could definitely be a balanced one. Hygiene isn't just about appearance. Professor May drew diagrams on the board. The same principles we use to keep our bodies clean apply to food preservation. Rin observed with genuine interest. As a cook's son, he found the connections between body care and preservation techniques fascinating. For example, May pointed to an illustration. Just as sweat can create an environment conducive to infections on our skin, incorrect moisture can ruin perfectly good food. The class continued with practical examples that were meticulously noted down. Many concepts reminded him of techniques he'd seen his parents use, though now he better understood the science behind them. When they reached crystal class, Professor Song made an announcement that caught everyone's attention. Today we'll begin with gathering theory, he explained, though those who prefer to continue with practice can head to the mines. What do you prefer to do? Ren asked his friends. Min and Taro exchanged doubtful looks. Gathering theory sounds important, Min began. But we also need more crystals, added Taro. You can stay for today, Ren suggested. I'll go to the mines. Alone. Taro seemed worried for a moment, but then remembered something. Though now that I think about it, in a month you haven't had a single accident down there. It's true, Min nodded. You haven't even stepped on a trap by accident, and some are well hidden. Knowledge has its advantages, Ren smiled. I'll be fine. From a few rows back, Jean observed the conversation with malicious interest. He leaned toward his group, whispering something that made them smile. Are you sure you'll be fine? Taro insisted. Perfectly. Ren was already packing his things. You learn the theory. We can compare notes later. As Ren left, Jean and his two cronies also stood up. Professor, Jean smiled innocently. We also prefer practice today. Song watched them with some suspicion, but nodded. Just remember to report your findings. Min and Taro watched Ren leave, followed at a distance by Jean and his group. They exchanged a worried look, but reminded themselves that so far, Ren had proven to know the mines better than anyone. He'll be fine, Taro murmured, though it wasn't clear if he was trying to convince Min or himself. After all, he's the expert, right? Jin's group's suppressed laughter didn't help calm their worries. The academy's corridors were left behind him as Run ran toward the mines. A month of Lin's brutal training had transformed his once scrawny frame. His pursuers could barely keep pace now, their heavy breathing betraying their exhaustion. He's getting away. Jin's breathless voice resonated in the distance. Don't let that rotting boy reach the mines first. Rin smiled as he descended swiftly down the path toward the caves, each step sure despite the growing darkness. The mushrooms in his hair glowed softly, not just providing light, but revealing intricate mana patterns in the walls that only he could see, a roadmap of power written in light and shadow. Though these fools pursued him and wanted to ruin his day, he couldn't afford to miss even a single day of gathering. The 60-some bronze-rank crystals he'd accumulated over the month, while impressive for a beginner, fell far short of his needs. The 30 days of relentless mining had yielded decent results, but nowhere near enough. After spending 500 iron crystals on the lens to process Taro's crystals, only 200 remained in his reserves. He urgently needed to replenish his stocks. The exchange rates weren't helping either. Trading his remaining iron crystals for bronze ones would also be wasteful with the school's exchange tax, raising the cost from 10 to 13, yielding a mere 15 bronze crystals from his 200. Not worth it. especially considering the other costly materials his evolution would require. And that wasn't all. The deep earth needed for Taro's sealing and the large crystals grew increasingly scarce in the permitted levels. The past month had stripped the easily accessible areas bare, leaving only remnants where rich veins once flowed. Second and third-year students had already claimed the prime safe locations, forcing newcomers to work harder for lesser rewards. The sound of clumsy footsteps and labored breathing faded as Run delved deeper into the tunnels. Perfect, he thought while navigating the dark tunnels with precision, the mushrooms in his hair barely glowing now, adapting instinctively to his need for stealth. They'll follow exactly where I need them to go. He paused in an intersection, studying mana patterns invisible to normal eyes. The official mining zone's deepest point at 100 meters loomed ahead, but the real treasures lay beyond. Untouched veins of bronze crystals gleamed faintly in the depths, visible only to his specialized sight. Distant footsteps echoed through the tunnel. Gene and his group weren't exactly masters of stealth, their heavy steps and whispered curses giving away their position. "Over here," one of Jin's followers shouted, voice bouncing off the stone walls. I saw his stupid mushrooms glowing. Rin continued deeper into the tunnel, each step precise and soundless. The mushrooms in his hair dimmed further, becoming barely visible specks of light. His knowledge showed him exactly where to step, which patches of ground to avoid, which walls could bear weight, and which might crumble at a touch. "They're still following," he confirmed, briefly increasing his light to draw them on, listening to their unsubtle pursuit echoing through the tunnels. Rin stopped near the 100-meter mark. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed more slowly now, struggling to process the dense mana saturating the air. A guard hummed distractedly beside the access to the next level, clearly bored with his assignment. Guards never let iron-rank beast students pass below 100 meters without authorization. He reflected, hearing his pursuers' echoes growing closer. But if I can get Jin's shouts to distract him, I could make it down to 150. Knowledge flowed through his mind as he calculated risks. Incorrect maturation, 31/1000. At this depth, his spore accumulated 1 point of incorrect maturation per day. In 30 days of ventures here, he'd accumulated 31, and deeper levels would add 2 points instead of 1. Just 4 hours of work today would bring him to 33. But with only 33 points accumulated out of 1,000, he still had room to maneuver. Should hold out about 4 hours before mana poisoning becomes an issue at 150 meters, he continued analyzing. Lesser worms are easy to avoid if you know their patterns. Time will be the real limitation. Jin's group's footsteps grew louder, their confidence building as they thought they had him cornered. "Don't let him escape." Jin's voice thundered through the tunnels. This time the rotting boy has nowhere to hide. A smile played across his face as he positioned himself near a specific intersection. They were exactly where he needed them. "There's light ahead," Kai called out, his scales glinting in the dim light. I saw those stupid mushrooms glow. Gene and his group were about to learn that following the rotting boy into the depths might not have been their wisest decision. "I can barely see anything down here," Cass complained, her eagle eyes straining to adapt to the darkness. "Shut up," Gene hissed, his tiger patterns casting faint shadows. "I think I see him ahead." Rin moved with precision across the uneven terrain, each step calculated to lead them toward the natural trap he'd discovered days ago. The lesser worms' abandoned nests created perfect cavities, invisible to inexperienced eyes, but clearly marked in the mana patterns only he could see. "Just need them to fall in there," he thought as he approached the exact point. "Their shouts will distract the guard long enough." There are rich bronze crystal veins at 150 meters, and more importantly, uncontaminated deep earth. "Over here," Jin's voice echoed through the tunnel. I saw him turn this corner. The group of bullies turned sharply, their footsteps resonating against the stone. The mushrooms in Ren's hair barely emitted a faint glow as he hid in a wall crevice, watching. "Where is he?" Jean growled, his tiger markings glowing in the darkness. He couldn't just disappear like that. Maybe we should, Cass began, but her voice cut off abruptly. There he is. Jin's voice thundered through the tunnel. We've got you. You'll learn to respect real beasts, rotting boy. You can't go anywhere now. Oh, there are many places to go. Rin stepped back, carefully calculating his position. You just have to know where to step. Rin feigned surprise at seeing his pursuers running toward him. Don't let him escape. Jin ran at the front, his tiger markings glowing with anticipation. Just a little more. The ground beneath their feet gave way with an ominous crack. For a moment, time seemed to freeze as the reality of their situation registered. Rin feigned surprise at seeing his pursuers running toward him. Don't let him escape. Jin ran at the front. His beast's manifestation glowed brighter in the dense mana, betraying his excitement at cornering his prey. Just a little more. The ground beneath their feet gave way with an ominous crack. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Jin's confident grin transformed into wide-eyed realization, his followers' faces reflecting dawning horror as the floor crumbled beneath them. Panicked screams echoed through the tunnels as the group plummeted into the hidden cavity. The cacophony of falling rocks and bodies hitting packed earth created a symphony of chaos that would surely draw attention. Help! Jin's voice had lost all trace of its former arrogance, replaced by raw fear. Someone! The panic-stricken cries quickly attracted the guard. Rin had already melted into the shadows of a small side tunnel, his movements silent and precise. What's happening over there? The guard's voice approached rapidly, boots crunching on loose stone. Keep calm. Perfect, Rin thought, moving silently toward the adjacent wall near the entrance to the depths, a passage he'd been preparing for days. The crack, disguised as a simple extraction tunnel, was actually his escape route, carefully weakened over multiple visits. We're trapped, Kai shouted, his voice cracking with genuine fear. The floor collapsed. Stay calm. The guard was already assessing the situation. Don't move. I'll get you out of there. Rin pressed against the weakened section of the wall. The abandoned lesser worm tunnel needed just one more push. With a crackle barely audible under the bully's shouts, the rock gave way. Just enough, he observed while sliding through the narrow passage. His thin body barely fit through the opening, a benefit of still being a relatively slim child. Watch the edge. The guard's voice faded as Run descended on the other side. I'm throwing down a rope. The shouts and chaos continued above, providing perfect cover. Rin moved quickly but precisely along the now clear path. Now I'll have a few hours apiece to search for what I need below. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed more slowly with each meter he descended, the dense mana making their work more difficult. Time is running, he reminded himself as he ventured deeper. My ankle. Jin's distant voice resonated with feigned pain. I think it's broken. Calm down, boy. The guard's voice grew more distant. These upper tunnels were abandoned. They all once belonged to displaced hungry beasts that have already died, so don't panic. Take the rope. Rin smiled as he descended. Jin would probably stretch the drama as long as possible, which gave him more time. The real race against the clock was with mana poisoning. Bronze crystal veins gleamed temptingly in the walls. But it was better to start from the deepest ones. He could already sense the rich deposits of crystals and deep earth waiting. For hours before the poisoning became dangerous, it was time to make every minute count. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he studied the patterns on the tunnel walls. The marks left by lesser worms formed an intricate map for those who knew how to read it. This isn't normal, he thought as his fingers traced the lines of mana residue that glowed faintly. Too many recent marks, too many overlapping patterns. The abandoned tunnels intersected more frequently than his knowledge told him was normal. Where he would typically find 2 or 3 intersections, now he saw 5 or 6. The lesser worms were expanding their territory, digging new routes with unusual frequency. Why are they so active? Rin stopped to examine a particularly fresh mark. The mushrooms in his hair revealed the still vibrant mana trail. This is less than a day old. Knowledge flowed through his mind as he analyzed the patterns. Lesser worms only proliferated like this when significant changes occurred in mana currents. Something was altering the natural flows below. A side tunnel caught his attention. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a small person to pass through crouched, and the darkness seemed denser there. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed stronger, detecting something. Perfect, he smiled upon examining the wall. A bronze crystal vein, richer than normal, intertwined with veins of uncontaminated dark earth. It was an oddly convenient combination, almost unnatural. Rin extracted his tools with extreme care. Each strike would need to be precise, controlled. The slightest echo could attract unwanted attention. The mushrooms pulsed in warning. A lesser worm had passed through a nearby tunnel recently. Its senses would still be alert to any vibration. Patience, he reminded himself while positioning his pick. One strong blow in the wrong place, and I'll have company very soon. The first impact was barely louder than a whisper against the rock. Rin worked methodically, each movement calculated to minimize noise. The vein was surprisingly generous, bronze crystals practically jumping into his hands once he found the correct pressure points. 2 hours of methodical work had filled Rin's bag with a satisfactory amount of crystals and deep earth. If Taro knew I was using worm excrement to seal his crystals. An amused smile crossed his face as he stored another portion of the dark substance. Better he keeps thinking we only use moonlight and not special earth from the depths. The mushrooms pulsed more slowly, the dense mana making it increasingly difficult to process the environment. But knowledge kept flowing, showing him exactly where to strike, what angles to use, how to extract and store the dark earth without contaminating it. It's almost too perfect, he thought while storing another crystal. The richness of the deposit, the presence of pure dark earth, the unusual proliferation of tunnels. Everything suggested something had changed in the depths. A distant sound made him pause. A worm's dragging? Or just the natural echo of the caves? Another echo, closer this time. The sound of something dragging made his hand stop. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed more slowly, adapting to better detect nearby movements. This vein is too rich to be so untouched, he reflected while remaining motionless. Knowledge flowed, showing him clues others would overlook. The marks on the walls, the crystallized mana patterns. This was not a lesser worm's, but a common worm's last gift when they expelled it from its territory. The dragging drew closer. Rin held his breath, his body completely still. A lesser worm emerged from a side tunnel, its pale body glowing faintly with absorption. Rin held his breath, his body completely still, pressed against the cool stone wall. Each heartbeat seemed unnaturally loud in the oppressive silence of the deep tunnels. A lesser worm emerged from a side tunnel, its pale body glowing faintly with absorbed mana. The creature's rugged skin revealed intricate patterns of mana circulation, a beautiful display of natural energy processing. Must have been about 2 months ago, his mental analysis continued while observing the worm. The common worm probably died or returned to the depths, but its last defecation left this zone separated. The knowledge flowing through his mind painted a clear picture of the tunnel's recent history. The lesser worm advanced near the deposit, its movements fluid and purposeful. Its olfactory sensors quivered, drawn by the rich mana concentration in the vein. Ren watched, fascinated, as the blind creature approached the area where he had been working. Each movement revealed more about its nature, its hunting patterns, its sensory capabilities. Mana attracts them, he thought while the worm tentatively tested the earth near the deposit. But the residue, his knowledge, showed him exactly what would happen next, like reading a script written in mana patterns. Just as expected, the worm recoiled almost immediately. Its sensors writhed in what appeared to be disgust before the creature rapidly retreated through another tunnel, its body contracting in visible revulsion. Common worm excrement must taste terrible to them. Ren's smile widened. It's like a natural repellent. The mana in the vein attracts them, but one taste of these residues. The elegant simplicity of nature's defense mechanisms never ceased to amaze him. Ren waited several moments more before resuming his work, each second measured carefully against the growing pressure of mana poisoning in his system. That's why this vein has retained so much mana. His mind connected the pieces while extracting another crystal. Lesser worms detect it because of its mana richness, but the common worm's residues keep them away. Each new discovery reinforced his understanding of the mine's ecosystem. His fingers traced the crystallization lines on the wall. The mana had concentrated uniquely here, preserved by the peculiar nature of the deposit. The patterns told a story of power trapped and refined over recent months. Nobody else would come looking in such a cramped hole, and lesser worms won't eat what's basically a pile of worm feces unless by accident, he thought while packing another portion. The irony of finding treasure again in what others would avoid brought a slight smile to his face. The mushrooms pulsed again, detecting another movement in the distance, but farther away this time. Ren continued his work, each movement precise and silent. He had found a unique treasure here, and he wasn't going to waste it. The density of the mana, the quality of the crystals, the perfect preservation of the deep earth, it was a miraculous combination of circumstances at this low depth. Just hope Taro never asks why his special crystal has that particular color. He smiled while sealing his bag. The knowledge had shown him many secrets of the depths, and this was one of the most useful, however unpleasant it might seem. Ren leaned against the tunnel wall, his legs trembling slightly from the effort of the last hours. The bag at his waist weighed pleasantly, the result of a productive but risky expedition. The bronze crystals clinked softly against the iron ones, while the black earth remained stored in its own bag. 2 bags, almost 40 bronze crystals. He counted mentally while the mushrooms in his hair pulsed ever more slowly, plus the 50 some iron ones that surrounded them in the vein, and enough black earth for several complete ceilings. Could get more, but a slight dizziness made him lean against the wall again. The dense mana was beginning to affect his system after more than 3 hours of exposure. The mushroom's processing capacity severely reduced. Time to start heading out, he straightened with effort. 40 minutes before the mana poisoning becomes serious. Rin took out his canteen and took a long drink. The water helped mitigate the effects, but it was only a temporary solution. He needed to get out soon. Following the mana residue patterns on the walls, Rin moved methodically toward the upper zone, each scratch, each crystallized mana residue telling a story. His eyes scanned each intersection, looking for something specific. After several minutes of searching, he found what he needed. There, a relatively gentle slope rose in one of the side tunnels. The marks on the walls showed the characteristic traces of a lesser worm that had abandoned the area long ago. The tunnel seemed to end abruptly several meters up. Perfect. A smile formed on his face while examining the formation. Time to build my exit. Rin took out some tools and began working in the abandoned tunnel. Each movement was precise despite the growing dizziness. There was no time for errors. Only 30 minutes to execute his exit plan, and his alibi depended on doing this correctly. The guards are meticulous with exit records, he thought while beginning to work in the abandoned tunnel. They'll need a convincing explanation for this amount of crystals. Something that doesn't raise suspicions about forbidden levels, especially if he wanted to collect his doubled month-end reward. 25 minutes, he estimated while feeling another wave of dizziness. Need to finish this and start ascending in the next 10, or I won't reach the surface in presentable condition. Sweat ran down his forehead as he continued his work. Each passing minute made his movements more difficult, more imprecise. First, he used the residual energy in the lens he had bought and overcharged a crystal, then sealed it with deep earth. The crystal began to glow in a brown tone. Rin carefully deposited 5 bronze crystals on the ground, forming a specific pattern. His fingers trembled slightly while placing each one, not just from mana poisoning, but from the pain of wasting valuable resources. Hurts to use bronze crystals like this, he thought while taking out 3 more from his bag. But I need the worm to detect them from afar. Iron ones wouldn't be enough attraction at this 115 meters low depth. The fresh marks on the walls confirmed what was necessary to execute his plan. A lesser worm had passed through here recently, its sensors probably still alert to any signal in its territory. The mushrooms in Ren's hair, though weak, could still detect the fresh mana trail. This one must be near leveling up, he analyzed while studying the residue patterns. The marks are deep, regular. It's been accumulating mana consistently. With methodical precision, Ren began to strike This one must be close to ranking up, he analyzed while studying the residue patterns. The marks are deep, regular. It's been consistently accumulating mana. With methodical precision, Ren began to strike the tunnel wall. These weren't random blows. They followed a specific rhythm, a vibration that mimicked the lesser worm's mating call. Each tap resonated through the ancient stone, carrying subtle harmonics that only the creatures could fully appreciate. Tap, 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 tap. It's not really mating. Knowledge flowed through his mind while maintaining the rhythm. It's more like an invitation to joint evolution. The complex social behaviors of these supposedly simple creatures never cease to amaze him. Tap, 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 tap. Lesser worms, upon reaching certain levels of maturity and mana accumulation, initiated this ritual. It was their way of seeking a compatible partner to merge with and evolve into a larger, more powerful common worm. Each tap echoed the ancient dance of transformation that had shaped these tunnels for centuries. Ren placed more crystals, forming a path leading toward the ascending tunnel he had prepared. Each crystal was strategically positioned, calculating the optimal distance for the worm to detect them sequentially. The placement had to be perfect, too close together, and they'd overwhelm the creature's senses. Too far apart, and it might lose interest. The concentrated mana in bronze crystals. He continued his analysis while working, his movements precise despite growing fatigue, mimics the signal of a mature worm offering part of its accumulation as an incentive for fusion. Tap, 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 tap. A distant echo responded to his strikes. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed weakly, detecting movement approaching. Something had heard his call and found it intriguing enough to investigate. Perfect. Now I just need to maintain the rhythm. Ren continued his rhythmic calling, each series of strikes precisely spaced. The knowledge showed him exactly how to modulate the vibrations to maintain the worm's interest without alerting it that something was wrong. Each tap had to be perfect. Too strong would suggest aggression. Too weak would indicate weakness. The crystals glowed faintly in the darkness, their concentrated mana acting like beacons for the approaching creature. The path he had created led directly to the ascending tunnel, where more crystals waited. It was a trail of irresistible temptation for a creature driven by mana hunger. An almost mature lesser worm can't resist a signal like this, he thought while listening to the increasingly closer movements. The promise of enough concentrated mana to evolve. It's like showing a feast to a starving man. The sound of something dragging grew louder. Ren maintained a rhythm, though each strike became more difficult with his arms numbed by poisoning. The dense mana of the deep tunnels was taking its toll, but he couldn't stop now. Tap, 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 tap. Come on, he mentally urged while feeling the worm approaching. I just need you to follow the path upward. You get some bronze crystals, I get my escape route. The bargain seemed fair enough, even if his partner in this dance was unaware of the final exchange. The mushrooms in his hair could barely process the ambient mana now, but it didn't matter. The plan was in motion, and the worm was approaching exactly as he had foreseen. Each movement brought it closer to springing his carefully laid trap. Ren slid silently toward a tunnel bend when he had made enough attraction taps, his hand holding the specially prepared brown crystal. The lens light had altered its structure, and the addition of common worm excrement had transformed it into a bronze-level earth crystal. Now comes the delicate part, he thought while listening to the approaching worm. The lesser worm emerged from below, its sensors vibrating with excitement at the mana concentration. Without hesitation, the creature lunged at the first pile of 5 crystals, absorbing them with frenzied movements. Hungry, Ren observed as the worm followed the path of crystals he had laid out. Perfect. With silent steps, he began following the creature, maintaining a safe distance. The worm continued its ascent through the tunnel, each crystal drawing it higher, away from the high mana concentration zone. A little more. Ren controlled his breathing as they climbed. The dizziness from poisoning made maintaining balance a challenge. Just a little higher up, the worm reached the last crystal at the tunnel's dead end. Its sensors writhed in confusion at detecting no more mana signals nor traces of the supposed evolution partner. Before you decide to return, Ren struck the wall in a specific pattern, but this time different. Not the mating rhythm, but something more aggressive, more threatening. The sound a worm would make defending its territory. The reaction was immediate and grotesque. The lesser worm's body contorted in an unnatural peristaltic movement, its posterior end transforming into a new head while the original retracted. Now, without losing a second, Ren threw the processed crystal directly toward the worm's new mouth. In the same movement, he dropped and slid down the tunnel slope, his hands striking the walls in a rhythm that mimicked a superior worm's threat. The lesser worm froze for a moment, caught between the confusion of contradictory signals and the sudden alteration in its system from the special crystal. Its body contorted again, tried to move away from the supposed threat. As it advanced, it began digging the tunnel upward, exactly what Ren needed. When it was about to realize that the mana was too low here and turn around, it noticed the problem in its internal mana flow, but it was too late. 3, 2, 1. The mana imbalance in the worm's body reached its critical point. The creature writhed violently, its body glowing with unstable light. It was time. Dizziness crept in, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through. Ren clapped 3 times as fast as he could with all his strength, his hands firm, but not so much, forming a perfect hollow curve to amplify the sound. With a sharp shriek that resonated through the tunnels, the worm shot upward, its body frantically digging through the rock. Boom! The small explosion shook the tunnel, sending a rain of rock fragments and crystals. Ren protected himself, a satisfied smile on his face while the dust settled. And that's how you create an escape route, he thought while climbing up through the new tunnel connecting to the upper levels. Though it pains me to have spent so many bronze crystals, at least now I have a perfect explanation for my discovery. The dizziness intensified. He needed to get out soon. But his plan had worked perfectly. Now all that remained was to climb up and tell his story of how he had accidentally found all these materials after a crazed worm dug a new tunnel and exploded near him, burying him in a hole. Ren climbed hurriedly through the newly formed tunnel, his legs trembling from effort and mana poisoning. The mushrooms in his hair barely emitted a faint glow, but he could still distinguish the disaster scene before him. What a mess, he thought while examining the scattered remains of the lesser worm. Fragments of grayish flesh and greenish fluids covered the tunnel walls. The characteristic smell of mana and iron-rank beast flesh permeated the air. It was a shame that despite the relatively high mana concentration, the worms were so inefficient and only iron rank at that depth. Other bronze rank beasts could live there without problem. Of course, Ren doubted if he could eliminate those so easily. But not everything was bad. His eyes lit up upon detecting some of the bronze crystals he had used as bait, miraculously intact among the remains. He hurried to collect them, each movement calculated despite his growing dizziness. At least I recovered some, he thought while storing them. Though I would have preferred it if it were a bronze beast, I need many parts for cultivation. His fingers stopped on something more solid among the organic remains. Teeth. Lesser worm teeth, though from an iron beast, had their uses. Ren carefully collected them, his mind already calculating their possible applications. They're not bronze beast fangs, but they're almost as strong due to digging specialization they'll serve for. A particular glow caught his attention. Among the mass of remains, something pulsed weakly with a silvery light. Ren held his breath while carefully pushing aside the shredded tissues. The core. It wasn't really a complete core. Unlike the complete core of the bronze mantis, for example, the lesser worm's was more primitive, barely transforming, so it couldn't process well. It was more like a storage, closer to a simple mana crystal. But the silver color didn't lie. It contained approximately 100 units of concentrated mana. A low-quality silver crystal, he evaluated while carefully picking it up. Imperfect, unstable, but with proper processing could be useful. The sound of approaching boots interrupted his thoughts. The guards, attracted by the explosion, wouldn't take long to arrive. Rin quickly stored the core along with the other recovered materials. It was time to put the last part of his plan into practice. Showtime, he thought while composing his expression of surprise and confusion. His mushrooms, weakened by poisoning, provided the perfect image of an exhausted student who had just lived an unexpected experience. The guard sound drew closer. Rin mentally reviewed his story one last time. The discovery of an unusually rich vein that attracted the crazed worm, the unexpected explosion. Everything fit perfectly. His legs trembled. He didn't have to fake the exhaustion. Mana poisoning was reaching concerning levels. But it had been worth it. Between legitimately collected crystals, those recovered from the remains, and the unexpected silver core, the expedition had been more than successful. Though, he reflected while hearing the guards' voices getting closer. Explaining the presence of a silver core will be interesting. I just can't believe it. Taro shook his head while examining one of the bronze crystals. All this was inside the worm. Rin reclined on his bed. The mana poisoning still made his head spin, but his friend's expressions of amazement were worth the discomfort. 38 bronze crystals. Min meticulously counted, organizing the materials on the table. 59 iron, and these bags of deep sand weigh at least a kilo each. Lu whistled, impressed. Fortune smiles on you, fungus. Though being near when the worm exploded, don't know whether to call it good or bad luck. The guards say they'd never seen anything like it, Rin shrugged, maintaining his innocent expression. Apparently the worm consumed too rich a vein and its mana overloaded. If they knew I caused that overload. And look at this. Taro held the silver core against the light. A silver-grade mana crystal. How did a lesser worm have something like this? Master Song explained it in class. Min added, lesser worms haven't yet developed complete processing cores. At that level, they just use crystal structures to store mana. Rin smiled while watching his friends examine his haul. This month had been exceptionally productive. 100 bronze crystals, 783 iron, 2.5 kilos of deep sand, 1 silver crystal, and several useful lesser worm parts. Must be worth around 2,500 crystals to double in tomorrow's report, he calculated mentally. The school will really double the value. Everything was noted in the guards' records, who had been surprised all month by Ren's effectiveness. They even had a bet to calculate his daily earnings and called him the lucky fungus. This deserves a celebration. Lou pulled some candies from his drawer. The rotting fungus is now the lucky fungus. Taro laughed while accepting a candy. Who would have thought being in the wrong place at the wrong time would turn out so beneficial? If they knew how long it took to plan that accident. The door burst open. Ren. Lin's icy tone made everyone freeze. The young instructor stood in the doorway, her expression dangerously calm. Would you care to explain why you're not at the training field? The color drained from Ren's face. Night training. He had completely forgotten. Master Lin, I'm overloaded with mana. Oh, so you have energy to celebrate, but not to train? Actually, I feel quite bad, and... Lin interrupted him by grabbing his shirt collar and began dragging him toward the door. Perfect. Physical training is excellent for purging excess mana from the system. But Master Lin, no buts. 30 additional laps for being late. Taro, Min, and Lu watched with amusement and sympathy as their friend was dragged out of the room. Save me some candy. Rin managed to shout before the door closed. His friend's laughter followed him down the hallway as Lin dragged him relentlessly toward the training field. Despite the exhaustion and dizziness, Rin couldn't help but smile. I guess this is the price of success, he thought while resigning himself to a night of brutal exercise. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed with renewed energy as he walked toward the exchange area with his friends. Lin's pill, combined with last night's brutal training session, this morning's workout, and some meditative circulation had effectively cleansed the excess mana from his system. I can't believe how well it went today. Taro practically bounced as they walked, his beetle's markings shimmering with excitement. I thought I'd struggle again, but the circulation was so much smoother. I could almost feel the patterns. A smile tugged at Ren's lips as he recalled their morning session. Watching Taro's progress was satisfying, like seeing a complex puzzle slowly come together. You've improved tremendously. Soon you won't need my guidance. And the sooner he masters it, Ren thought, the sooner I can focus on my own advancement. The exchange area buzzed with life, a hive of activity where students from all years crowded around the counters. The air hummed with haggling voices and the subtle resonance of magical items changing hands. Crystals clinked against scales, while preserved beast parts gleamed in their glass containers. How much did you get with the duplication? Min's water snake coiled lazily around his shoulders as he asked. They gave me 2,500 crystals, Ren replied as they approached the beast parts counter. Glass containers lined the shelves, their contents casting prismatic shadows on the worn wood. I have almost 4,000 usable, the rest are materials. Though I doubt it's enough for much cultivation, I hope it's sufficient to begin cultivation. His heart sank when he inquired about the prices of what he needed. Bronze-rank beast parts, meticulously preserved in crystal containers, glowed tantalizingly. Each piece cost a fortune, 1,000 crystals apiece. Thankfully, he didn't need those pristine specimens. But even the discarded parts, the ones slowly rotting that he actually required. 100 crystals for a daily portion's worth for my crystals, he muttered, examining a fragment of common crocodile skin that had begun to decompose. Its scales still held a faint iridescence despite the decay. And I need 100 portions. They were cheap by comparison, but far from free. His spore wasn't the only creature that could utilize materials in that state for cultivation. Lou whistled low and long. Wow, 10,000 crystals just for that garbage. And you still need other materials, right? That spore really is a pain in your side. Sure, the investment's worth it. It was undoubtedly worth it, but the timeline... Ren nodded grimly and made his way to the poisonous fungi section. The vendor, an older woman with burn scars crisscrossing her hands like a roadmap of past mistakes, gave him a sympathetic look. 3,000 per piece, she said before he could ask, gesturing to the glowing specimens. And yes, it's expensive. We have to import them from Yano City, and relations aren't exactly friendly with our Yano City right now. Each one will process 10 crystals. Another 30,000 crystals. Ren felt a headache building behind his eyes. An intelligence rune? He pointed toward the artifacts section with a trembling finger, hoping against hope. The intelligence rune pulsed with a soft blue glow. It was among the most basic, but still, that's one of the cheap ones, like Vitality runes. It cost 10,000, the vendor side. I need 50,000 crystals total. Min scribbled quick calculations in his notebook, his water snake peering curiously at the numbers. Based on what you say you need, assuming luck keeps striking, you maintain your current gathering pace, and factoring in the school's duplication. 10 months minimum. Ren completed the thought, shoulders slumping slightly. And that's if I maintain this level of production. If I could go deeper, but mana poisoning is already a problem at this depth. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed weakly at the thought. It's not so bad. Taro tried to lift the mood, his beetle's markings brightening with his optimism. 10 months will fly by. Besides, meanwhile I can keep improving my control, and... Ren! The group turned to see Master Lin approaching, her crane's feathers shimmering with each stride. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a dangerous glint in her eyes. I hope you're not thinking of skipping tonight's training again. Rin swallowed hard. No, of course not. I was just... Lin studied him for a moment, her gaze piercing. The path to bronze rank is never easy. But you got many crystals this month, so keep at it. And remember, sometimes the longest path is the safest. If she knew how I really get the crystals, not the safest. Now, Lin continued, a predatory smile forming on her lips. Since you have so much energy for calculations, I'm sure you can handle some extra exercise sets tonight. Rin groaned while his friends tried to hide their laughter. Evolution would have to wait for now. He had another session of training to face. Days fell back into routine for Ren. Walking toward the deep mines, he reflected on his situation. Each step echoed his thoughts down the empty corridor. One worm exploding near the lucky fungus, and finding a rich vein? Believable, he thought, skillfully dodging a group of students. Their whispers followed him, the latest rumors about his impossible luck. 2 worms exploding in a week, they'd start asking uncomfortable questions. The lucky fungus reputation was useful, but it had limits. He could already imagine the guard's suspicious looks if accidents with worms became too frequent. Jin's group watched from afar, shooting threatening glances but keeping their distance. The tunnel incident had left a lasting impression, a whole week of peace. Though they'd returned to their old habits, something had shifted. "There goes the rotting boy," one whispered, but they moved with newfound caution. "At least they don't chase me like madmen anymore." Rin smiled while taking an unnecessarily complex detour. And when they do, losing them had become almost entertaining. A month of Lin's training had worked wonders for his endurance, and he knew every corner of the upper tunnels like the back of his hand. The new secret tunnel had been a success. Using the lesser worm's mating call, he managed to get another worm to dig a small hidden passage. It was more discreet than the previous one, which the guards had quickly sealed after the incident. 5 bronze crystals, 50 iron, a quarter kilo of deep earth. He mentally tallied his daily gathering. A lucky amount, but not suspicious. The mushrooms pulsed as he descended through the hidden passage. The routine had become precise. Enter, gather for 30 minutes, exit. No explosions, no drama. Just a persistent student with a consistently lucky streak. But it's not enough, he calculated while carefully extracting a bronze crystal. At this rate, reaching 50,000 crystals would take far too long. "I need another way." His thoughts were interrupted by distant student conversations. Fragments about the upcoming gathering expedition reached his ears, making his heart race with possibility. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed stronger, responding to his sudden interest. The expedition, an opportunity to gather beyond the school's usual boundaries. New territories, he reflected while storing the day's crystals. New beasts, new resources. A smile formed on his face as he ascended. The risks would be greater outside school grounds, but so would the rewards. More importantly, nobody would question a lucky gathering during an official expedition. "I'll need to prepare well," he thought while heading toward the exit. The mushrooms pulsed softly, as if approving his plan. The daily routine would continue for now, but the expedition promised to be an opportunity to significantly accelerate his progress. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed softly as he counted the day's crystals. 120 in total value. That was his lucky, but not suspicious amount. Not quite the 1,000+ crystals counting materials from that first day, he reflected while carefully storing his gathering. But it's safer this way for now. The numbers were consistent, between 100 and 150 crystals daily. By month's end, it would amount to roughly 4,000, which the school would double to 8,000. Progress toward the needed 50,000 was slow, but at least it was steady. 2 days until the expedition, he thought while climbing through the hidden tunnel. The prospect of gathering beyond school boundaries offered new possibilities. Life had fallen into a rhythm. Taro practiced mana circulation daily, his control improving remarkably. He no longer needed as much guidance to distribute energy correctly. Morning training with Lin had become more bearable too. His muscles no longer screamed in protest with each exercise, and occasionally he could even maintain coherent conversation while completing his sets. It was today, after one of these morning sessions, when something unexpected happened in battle class. "Have you decided on your teams?" Master Yang's voice resonated across the training field. His stone behemoth gleamed under the morning sun as he surveyed the students. An uncomfortable silence was his answer. Though some groups had clearly formed, like Jean with his usual followers, many students still seemed undecided. "As I thought." Yang crossed his arms, the behemoth's markings rippling across his skin. It's difficult to choose partners without truly understanding how you work together in combat. Lynn stepped forward, her crane manifesting in feather patterns along her arms. That's why we've prepared something special for today. At her signal, several assistants began pushing something massive onto the field. It was a reinforced iron cage, covered by a dark canvas. In the final exam, you'll face a bronze-rank beast. Yang continued as students instinctively backed away. But before that, you need to understand the fundamentals of monster combat. Lin removed the canvas with a fluid motion. The students collectively held their breath. 10 enormous stones. Most students fell silent in confusion. Some laughed, until Yang struck one of the stones and woke it. Inside the cage, a stone lurker moved cautiously. It was roughly the height of a 10-year-old child, with a stocky body covered in protrusions where rocks and minerals adhered. Its 4 short legs ended in adhesive pads that allowed it to climb vertical surfaces. A stone lurker from the northern mines, Yang announced. Beasts that stalk the tunnels, disguising themselves as rocks to ambush their prey. This one's barely an iron-rank juvenile. The creature observed the students with small, bright eyes, almost hidden among the stone plates covering its face. Its behavior was notably cautious, finding itself surrounded by beings larger than itself, especially the teachers and assistants. We don't just breed them here, we regularly capture them from other mines, Lin continued. If we let them multiply outside the school's breeding chamber, they'd leave the caves and become a real danger to children. They're especially problematic because they tend to hide from adults and ambush prey their size or smaller. The stone lurker hunched in a corner of the cage, the rocks on its body rearranging to resemble a common big stone. If not for the slight movement of its breathing, it would be difficult to distinguish from its surroundings. They're slow but resilient, Lin explained. Their armor absorbs impacts and can rapidly grow to protect damaged areas. The key is finding points where the growth is weakest. They won't attack directly, Yang added while the creature maintained its disguise. They prefer to wait for the right moment. In caves, they drop from the ceiling onto distracted travelers. Here, you'll have to force them to move. They're naturally cowardly, Lin added. If they face serious resistance, they'll try to flee. The challenge is either defeating them or making them attempt to escape. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he absorbed this information. The stone lurker was a specialized predator, not particularly strong, but perfectly adapted for its ecological niche. Despite its modest size, its mass was considerable, the rocks covering its body adding significant weight to its already robust constitution. Ren found the creature fascinating, a beast that compensated for its lack of speed with adaptive defense and precise ambushes. His spore's knowledge revealed intricate details about its behavior and weaknesses that others might miss. What appeared to be a random pile of rocks was actually 10 perfectly camouflaged stone lurkers. You'll form teams of 3 if you haven't already, Yang continued, his voice carrying across the field as he passed the students a list to fill. Each team will have 5 minutes to face it. You don't need to defeat it, we just want to see how you handle a resilient creature while working as a team. Lin began bringing out the training equipment, laying it carefully on a nearby table. Choose your weapons according to your style. We have spears for maintaining distance, shields for defense, maces for blunt strikes. Pick what suits your approach best. As first team, Yang announced, consulting his now full list, Han, Sora, and June. Han, a boy with a weaver spider that created intricate hexagonal patterns on his skin, stepped forward decisively. Sora, whose deer manifested small but elegant horns in her hair, and June, who had a monkey that manifested brown markings on his hands, followed with notably less confidence. Choose your weapons, Lin indicated, gesturing toward the equipment array. You'll face one of them. Han took a spear confidently, his spider beast granting him excellent control with long tools. Sora chose a shield, its surface gleaming dully in the morning light, while June opted for a short sword despite its obvious limitations against stone. Cutting weapons are a poor choice against rock, Lin murmured, but didn't stop him from making his selection. This was, after all, a learning experience. Remember, Yang warned as the assistants selected which stone lurker they would face. These are ambush creatures. Don't let their apparent passivity fool you until the end. The team entered the designated area. The chosen stone lurker was released, immediately blending with its surroundings like just another rock. The only sign of its presence was a faint scraping sound as it settled into position. Begin. Remember, Yang warned as the assistants selected which stone lurker they would face. They are ambush creatures. Don't let their apparent passivity fool you until the end. The team entered the designated area, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence that had fallen over the training field. Students pressed forward to watch, eager to learn from either success or failure. The chosen stone lurker was released, immediately melting into its surroundings like just another rock. Begin. Han took the initiative, his spider's hexagonal patterns rippling across his skin as he moved forward with his spear held at the ready. Sora followed close behind with her shield. June covered the flank, his monkey's markings shifting nervously as he gripped his sword. Maintain formation, Lin suggested from the sidelines. Her experienced, I could already see the gaps in their coordination, the subtle signs of uncertainty in their movements. The stone lurker suddenly sprang to life, rising on its suction cup feet with shocking speed upon detecting that June was smaller than itself. Its mouth opened impossibly wide, revealing rows of crushing teeth designed to pulverize both stone and bone. The grinding sound of its jaw expanding sent shivers through the watching crowd. June screamed and stumbled backward, his sword shaking violently in his grip. His monkey's patterns distorted chaotically with panic, the usual brown markings becoming a jumbled mess that reflected his terror. The maintained formation shattered like glass. "Don't separate," Han shouted, his spear moving to intercept the stone lurker with spider-enhanced precision. But it was already too late. June had retreated too far, breaking the defensive line. Sora, equally frightened by the creature's sudden animation, had moved in the opposite direction with her shield, leaving a fatal gap in their defenses. The stone lurker, displaying the predatory intelligence that made its species so dangerous, instantly exploited the separation. It launched itself toward June with surprising agility, its stone-covered body, somehow, fluid in motion. The boy barely managed to raise his sword, the blade trembling as he faced the incoming mass of animated rock. Yang intervened with lightning speed, his behemoth manifesting fully as he caught the stone lurker mid-leap. The creature writhed in his grasp, its rock armor grinding against itself, but it was useless against the teacher's overwhelming strength. "Enough," he declared while returning the creature to its cage, its struggles diminishing as it recognized defeat. "What went wrong?" "They broke formation at the first scare," Lin answered. Only Han maintained his composure, but a team isn't just one competent member. The three students withdrew from the area, their failure weighing heavily on them. June still trembled, his monkey's markings faded and distorted. Sora stared at the ground, her deer's manifestation barely visible in her shame. Only Han maintained his composure, though frustration radiated from his rigid posture. "Next team," Yang called out, his voice carrying across the training field. Jean, Kai, and Cass. Jean stepped forward with a predatory smile, his tiger markings gleaming with an almost electric intensity. Kai flexed his arms, scales catching the morning light like polished jade. Cass stretched her red eagle wings, the feathers spreading in an impressive display. "This group will be different," Rin thought while observing from his position. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed as he studied their movements. Jean might be an idiot who falls for traps, but he's no fool in combat. "Choose your weapons," Lin indicated as Jin's group approached the arsenal. The variety of training weapons gleamed in the morning light, each designed for different combat styles. Jean studied the options before selecting a pair of battle caestus, metal-reinforced gloves designed for close combat. His tiger markings flared as he adjusted them, testing their fit with practiced movements. "No swords," Kai murmured, selecting a war hammer. His scales reflected light in complex patterns as he tested the weapon's weight, finding its balance point. Cass, surprising several observers, took up a shield. "Someone has to keep you alive," she declared as her red eagle feathers manifested, creating intricate defensive patterns across her arms. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he observed their formation. Unlike the previous group, they moved with clear purpose, each understanding their role in the team. Working together, even if just as bullies, had given them an unexpected advantage in coordination. The assistants released one of the stone lurkers. The creature immediately camouflaged itself, its suction cups gripping the ground as it waited for the perfect moment to strike. Its stillness was almost perfect, only the slightest movement betraying its breathing. "Begin," Yang commanded. Jean and Kai advanced with Cass between them, her shield ready and her eagle's enhanced vision scanning for any hint of movement. The stone lurker remained motionless, patiently waiting for an opening. "Keep your eyes open," Cass murmured. The stone lurker attacked suddenly, its suction cups releasing with a soft pop as it launched itself toward Kai. Its jaws gaped wide, revealing again those rows of grinding teeth designed to crush stone. But Cass had already anticipated the attack. Her shield intercepted the stone lurker mid-leap, her eagle feathers glowing as she absorbed the impact with ease. "Now," she shouted while holding the creature against her shield, her enhanced strength keeping it pinned. Jean and Kai struck from both sides. Jin's Caestus connected with tiger-enhanced force, while Kai's hammer descended with the full power of his beast behind it. The stone lurker's outer layer, still not fully hardened due to its youth, began to crack under their coordinated strikes. The creature attempted to bite, but Cass maintained her shield firmly in place. "Don't let it breathe." Jean and Kai doubled down on their assault. Each impact stripped away fragments of the stone lurker's mineral covering, gradually exposing the vulnerable flesh beneath. "The edges," Yang shouted from outside. "Focus your strikes where the stones meet." Jean activated his skill, his Caestus glowing as he found the weak joints between the mineral plates. Kai followed suit, his hammer now moving faster as he systematically destroyed the connections with brutal precision. The stone lurker shrieked. It attempted one final desperate attack, its jaws seeking Jin's leg. "I don't think so." Cass rotated her shield, deflecting the creature into a combined strike from her teammates. The simultaneous impact of Caestus and hammer shattered the stone lurker's remaining defenses. The creature collapsed, its camouflage dissolving as its body— "Enough," Yang declared, though it was unnecessary at this point. An effective execution, if somewhat messy. The coordination was decent. Lin added as assistants remove the body. But you relied too heavily on brute force. Against an adult stone lurker, that strategy would be far less effective. Jean shrugged while removing his Caestus, but his smile remained fierce. Kai rested his hammer on his shoulder, clearly satisfied, while Cass maintained her mock professional expression despite their success. "Brutal but effective," Rin thought as his mushrooms pulsed, analyzing the combat. Though Teacher Lin is right, that strategy only worked because it was a juvenile. It's better to target the internal parts. "Next team," Yang called out. "Brutal but effective," Rin thought as his mushrooms pulsed, analyzing the combat. Though Lin is right, that strategy only worked because it was a juvenile. Better to target the internal parts. "Next team," Yang called out. "Klein Goldcrest team," Yang announced, with Feng Zhao and Aster Blackwood. The Goldcrest heir stepped forward with the natural arrogance of nobility, his golden lion manifesting in brilliant patterns across his skin. The light caught the metallic sheen of his beast's markings, creating an almost ethereal glow. Feng, whose red cobra created scarlet scales along his neck, and Aster, with his rhinoceros's bluish markings, flanked him with similarly aristocratic bearing. "We won't need heavy weapons," Klein declared while selecting a light short sword, the blade catching the morning light. "Our beasts are more than sufficient." Feng chose a pair of daggers, their edges glinting dangerously, while Aster opted to take no weapon at all. His rhinoceros markings intensified, covering his arms with a bluish glow that promised raw power. Unlike previous groups, these three had trained together since childhood. Their beasts, all with high potential, complemented their styles naturally. The lion's overwhelming presence, the cobra's precision, and the rhinoceros's raw strength forming a deadly combination. The assistants released another stone lurker. The creature barely had time to camouflage before the team moved into action. Delta formation, Klein ordered without raising his voice. His companions positioned themselves instantly, Aster taking the front while Fong and Klein covered the flanks. Their movement spoke of countless hours of practice. Feng's cobra allowed him to detect the creature's body heat and, through it, the thinner areas of its armor. His scarlet scales shimmered as he focused his beast's sensory abilities. 30 centimeters down, slightly left of the eye crack, Fong reported, his scales glowing brighter with certainty. Aster advanced heavily, his rhinoceros manifesting in a controlled charge. The stone lurker attempted to jump at him, identifying him as an apparently smaller and weaker target than itself. A grave mistake. Klein's golden markings blazed as his lion responded. A roar, amplified by his beast's power, struck the stone lurker mid-leap. The sound wave made the stones on its body vibrate violently, creating weak points in its natural armor. Before it could recover, Fong appeared at its side, his daggers shining with a poisoned skill, finding the points weakened by the vibration with snake-like precision. The stone lurker tried to turn, but Aster was already there. His rhinoceros manifested a charge that, though contained, struck the creature with brutal power. "Finish it," Klein ordered, his voice blending with a growl that carried his lion's authority. All three attacked simultaneously, Feng's poisoned daggers finding vital points near the eyes, Aster's charge holding the creature in position, and Klein's final roar shattering what remained of its mineral armor before ending it with his sword. The stone lurker collapsed without even having time to screech. "Impressive coordination," Yang commented as assistants removed the body, though perhaps a bit excessive in mana use for a juvenile. "Excess is better than incompetence," Klein replied while sheathing his barely used sword. His lion's markings glowed with satisfaction. "Besides, we can use our skills 5 times without breaking a sweat." An interesting demonstration of those powerful beasts' natural abilities, Lin added. Though in a real situation, depending solely on their mana could be risky. Klein simply smiled, the gold in his skin shimmering. His companions maintained equally satisfied expressions as they returned to their positions, their superiority evident in every movement. Efficient, Rin thought, but arrogant. They're so used to their beasts solving everything they barely use their weapons. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed while analyzing the combat. It had been a crushing victory, yes, but also a demonstration of perhaps excessive dependence on their beasts and mana. "Next team," Yang called out. "Run, Taro and Min," he announced. The laughter began before he finished naming them. Jean and his group were particularly loud, their mockery echoing across the training ground. "The rotting fungus and his friends," someone shouted from behind. "This will be fun." Rin ignored the taunts as they descended to choose their weapons. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed as he approached the equipment. His eyes immediately fixed on the coiled ropes among the more traditional weapons. "Take that one," he whispered to his companions, selecting just one long, sturdy rope. He approached each one and whispered something in their ear. Taro and Min exchanged surprised looks, but nodded, trusting their friend's unconventional strategy. For himself, Rin chose a short spear. "Look!" Jin's mocking voice rose above the crowd. "The coward wants to stay far from the monster, though he can't even carry a normal long spear." The laughter increased. Even students who normally remained neutral smiled at the sight of the weak, mushroom boy unable to wield a longer standard spear. "Are you sure about your choices?" Lin asked, her expression neutral, but her eyes studying them with interest. Rin nodded, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing calmly. Knowledge flowed through his mind, revealing the stone lurker's peculiar anatomy, how their organs concentrated in a compact sphere with the brain aligned vertically above their posterior end. The assistants released another stone lurker. The creature immediately camouflaged itself, its suction cups gripping the ground while studying its opponents with predatory patience. Begin. The team's movement took everyone by surprise. Instead of the cautious approach they thought would be employed, Taro and Min ran forward, each holding one end of the extended rope. Rin followed, closely in the center, just behind the rope, his short spear ready. The stone lurker detected the movement and prepared to jump. Its sensors identified Rin as the closest target and smaller than itself. Its suction cups detached from the ground, its enormous mouth beginning to open. But it was too late. The rope caught it across the forehead mid-leap. Taro and Min pulled in unison, using the monster's own momentum to roll it backward. The stones on its body scraped against the ground as its belly was exposed. But it was a belly also completely covered in stone. What could the spear do there? Taro and Min pulled in unison, using the monster's own momentum to roll it backward. The sound of grinding stone filled the air as the creature's rock-covered body scraped against the ground, exposing its belly. But the belly was also completely covered in stone. What could the spear possibly do there? The audience held their breath, certain they were about to witness failure. Then Rin spotted it, a single small orifice, barely visible among the rocky plates. He didn't hesitate. The short spear found its target with surgical precision, plunging deep into the creature's cloaca and straight up. The stone lurker tensed once, then went completely still in the next instant. Death came swiftly and silently, catching everyone by surprise. Silence fell over the training field. The entire encounter had ended in mere seconds, leaving spectators struggling to process what they'd just witnessed. Well, Yang broke the silence, a barely contained smile playing at his lips. That was efficient. Lin approached to examine the fallen stone lurker. A direct strike to the brain through the cloaca. Impressive knowledge of their anatomy. The previous laughter had transformed into surprised whispers. Jean particularly looked like he'd swallowed something extremely unpleasant, his tiger markings dulling with his dampened mood. The fastest victory so far, Yang declared as assistants removed the body, and with minimal energy expenditure. Excellent teamwork. Taro and Min grinned while coiling their rope, their beasts manifesting proudly despite their supposedly weak status. An unorthodox approach, Lin commented, but perfectly executed. Sometimes knowledge truly is worth more than brute force. Next team, Yang called, though eyes remained fixed on the team that had just redefined expectations. Several more teams faced the challenge. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he observed each attempt, some more successful than others. "We can do it like the fungus team," one student declared confidently, holding a rope while his companions nodded eagerly. "If he could do it, so can we." They even took 2 ropes, and their leader corrected the weak, rotting boy's mistake by taking a long spear instead of a short one. But the stone lurker refused to cooperate with their plan. The ropes worked initially, flipping the creature, but then, "Stab it! Stab it! I'm trying." The spear bounced off the monster's rock skin, missing the tiny orifice completely. A second attempt proved equally fruitless. By the third try, the stone lurker had managed to break free, forcing Yang to intervene before someone got hurt. It's not just about copying ideas, Rin thought as the team retreated in shame, without understanding why certain things are done. Finally, it was Luna's team's turn. 2 girls accompanied her, students from noble families who had clearly requested to be her partners. They attempted to engage in conversation while selecting weapons, but Luna barely acknowledged them with brief nods. "We should coordinate a strategy," one suggested, adjusting her weapon with nervous movements. "It won't be necessary," was Luna's only response, her shadow wolf rippling beneath her skin. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed with anticipation. Luna's shadow wolf was different from other beasts. It possessed immense initial power and had started on the true evolution path from the beginning. The stone lurker was released, immediately seeking camouflage. Luna's companions assumed combat positions, but she simply extended her hand, her wolf's influence darkening the air around her. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then Rin saw it. The monster's shadow began moving unnaturally. The wolf emerged from it like spilled ink rising upward, its eyes glowing with spectral radiance. The stone lurker had no time to react. Shadows slipped between the cracks of its mineral armor like black water. A moment of absolute stillness, and then small explosions of blood erupted from every crack in the monster's armor. The wolf returned to Luna's shadow as silently as it had appeared, while the stone lurker collapsed, destroyed from within. The silence that followed was different from the one that had followed Ren's victory. There was no surprise or admiration, only cold respect mixed with fear. Efficient was all Yang said as assistants removed the shattered body. Luna's companions looked at her with both pride and nervousness, as if unsure whether to celebrate or maintain their distance. That shadow wolf, Ren observed as Luna returned to her place, as silent as her beast. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed, but for the first time, the knowledge flowing through them seemed incomplete, as if aspects of the shadow wolf lay beyond his current understanding. Yang called the next team, but many students kept glancing at Luna, wondering what other secrets their silent classmate concealed. After today's classes, in Professor Song's canceled session, they would finally venture outside for the first time. "Welcome to your first gathering expedition," Professor Song announced as students gathered in the main courtyard. "Before we begin, let me introduce Professor Zhao, who will lead the fifth and final teaching unit." A middle-aged man with owl markings on his arms stepped forward. Though his expression was kind, his eyes, sharpened by his beast, studied each student with clinical attention. "Exterior gathering exercises are crucial," Zhao began while assistants distributed equipment packages. "Here you'll learn to survive outside safe zones, identify valuable resources, and most importantly, recognize when to retreat." The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he examined his package. Ropes, tools, special containers, emergency rations. "Normally we would spend 3 days in the Iron Ring," Zhao continued, his gaze briefly resting on Ren. "However, this year we'll make some adjustments. The expedition will last 2.5 days. Murmurs immediately broke out among the students. "Why less time? 3 days every 2 months is tradition." Zhao raised a hand to silence the protests. "As some of you may know, we have a student whose beast has particular limitations with prolonged exposure to high mana concentration zones." All eyes turned to Run. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed weakly, as if confirming the professor's words. "Why less time? 3 days is tradition." Zhao raised a hand to silence the protests, his owl markings shimmering with quiet authority. "As some of you may know, we have a student whose beast has particular limitations with prolonged exposure to high mana concentration zones." All eyes turned to Run. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed weakly, as if confirming the professor's words. Their usual glow seemed somehow dimmer under the weight of so many stares. "It's not fair," someone protested for the back of the crowd. "Why should we all lose half a day because of the fungus?" "Yeah, let him stay behind if he can't handle it." Jin's smile turned malicious, his tiger markings rippling with cruel delight. "Or better yet, let him come, and we'll see how long he really lasts with that useless beast." Silence. Zhao's voice didn't rise, but the owl in his eyes gleamed with unmistakable authority. "This decision is not open for debate. I prefer a shorter excursion to risking any student's health." The protests transformed into resentful murmurs. Several students shot accusing glares at Ron, as if he had personally stolen those precious hours of exploration from them. The tension in the air was almost palpable. "If they knew I spent hours in deeper levels with higher mana concentration than the Iron Ring, it would be even worse," Rin thought while adjusting his equipment, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing with irony. Each soft glow seemed to mock their ignorance. "Safety is our priority," Song added, backing his colleague. His stance made it clear the matter was settled. 2.5 days are more than sufficient for a first expedition. Zhao began explaining the expedition details, permitted zones, danger signals, emergency protocols. But Ren could feel the resentful stares burning into him, especially from those who already considered him a burden to the class. Doesn't matter, he thought as the mushrooms pulsed softly. I have my own objectives to worry about for this expedition. The knowledge flowed through his mind, revealing possibilities his classmates couldn't even imagine. While they worried about half a day lost, he was planning to make every available minute count. After all, the best opportunities often lay where others saw only limitations. The student caravan advanced along the path toward the Iron Ring. The carts, protected by experienced guards, moved at a steady pace as they left the city behind. The landscape gradually transformed, becoming wilder with each passing mile. I can't believe they took away half a day, a student complained from the front cart, voice carrying on the wind. All because of the fungus. Run, seated between Taro and Min in one of the last carts, smiled slightly. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed with the vehicle's movement, their rhythm somehow matching the cart's gentle swaying. Ignore them, Taro murmured, his beetle's markings shifting protectively. They're just upset because they won't get to brag about lasting 3 full days without bathing. Min let out a giggle, his water snake coiling playfully, as if half a day less would make any difference in what they can gather. Actually, Rin lowered his voice conspiratorially. It's better this way. Mana is denser at dusk. They're doing everyone a favor. Really? Taro leaned in with interest, his beetle's markings rippling with curiosity. How do you know that? The mushrooms pulsed while Rin considered how much to reveal. Each glow seemed to carry secrets waiting to be shared. Let's say I've been studying mana patterns. The expert has spoken again. Write it down. Min joked, his water snake manifesting playfully around his neck. Though after the stone lurker incident, I'm starting to believe you really do know everything. From another cart, Jin's voice carried clearly. I bet he doesn't even last the first day. Who wants to take that bet? I bet he'll surprise us again. Unlike idiot Jin who only bores us. A soft voice cut through the laughter. Luna, seated in the adjacent cart, didn't even turn to speak, her shadow wolf rippling beneath her skin. An uncomfortable silence followed her words. Even Jin seemed at a loss for a response, his tiger markings dulling slightly. Did you hear that? Min whispered excitedly. Luna defended you. She didn't defend me, Rin corrected, though the mushrooms in his hair pulsed with interest. She's just setting a precedent for when I surprise them again. SHHHH. Min elbowed him playfully. Don't ruin the surprise. What surprise? Someone shouted from another cart. That the rotting fungus is going to faint before we even get there? More laughter, but Rin noticed it was less enthusiastic than before. The stone lurker incident had planted seeds of doubt in many minds. He observed the changing landscape thoughtfully. The trees grew sparser, the vegetation more untamed. They were approaching the Iron Ring, where the real challenges and opportunities awaited. Let them laugh, he murmured. Soon they'll have other things to worry about. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed while knowledge flowed, revealing the opportunities that approached. The Iron Ring might seem dangerous to his companions, but for him, it was a garden of possibilities waiting to be harvested. Though nothing here helps me evolve, Rin murmured thoughtfully. Everything has market value, and with the school's exchange bonus. The mushrooms pulsed while he calculated potential profits, each soft glow seeming to represent another opportunity. If I play my cards right, he whispered, this trip could be quite profitable. Look, Jin's voice interrupted his calculations. The fungus is already counting minutes until we return. Laughter erupted from other carts, but Rin ignored it. His mind was already mapping collection routes, calculating which zones would yield the best results. From her cart, Luna observed the same landscape, her shadow wolf partially manifested. For a moment, her eyes met Rin's, and a slight smile graced her lips before she turned her attention back to the horizon. See those twisted trees? Rin whispered as the cart crossed the Iron Ring's border. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed while knowledge flowed through his mind. They look normal during the day, but at night, it's shadow stalker territory. The what? Min leaned in with interest, his water snake mirroring his curiosity. Bat Medusa's black as night, Ren explained, his voice low and focused. They float in groups using gas sacs in their bodies. During the day, they sleep in caves, but when darkness falls they emerge to hunt, absorbing mana from anything that passes beneath them. They're practically invisible against the night sky. And look at the trees themselves. He pointed to branches where fine threads gleamed under the sun. Moon Weaver territory. They look like cats? Taro squinted, observing a white figure among the branches. Moth cats, Rin corrected. Their fur is white as silk, and they have moth-like wings, but can only glide. They weave nets between trees, using threads they produce naturally. They're daytime hunters. Shadow stalkers are too dangerous at night. The mushrooms pulsed while he observed the ground. And those mounds that look like grass or dirt, they're not what they appear to be. Moth cats, Rin corrected. Their fur is white as silk, and they have moth-like wings but can only glide. They weave nets between trees, using threads they naturally produce. They're daytime hunters. Shadow stalkers are far too dangerous at night. The mushrooms pulsed while he observed the ground, revealing patterns others might miss. And those mounds that look like grass or dirt, they're not what they appear to be. Are those beasts too? Min asked, his water snake coiling closer in anticipation. Bark stalkers, Rin explained, pointing to what appeared to be random terrain features. Imagine a toad the size of a small table, with a crab-like shell. They can change their skin's color and texture to match their surroundings, piles of leaves, earth, even moss-covered rocks. Their camouflage is nearly perfect, which makes them particularly dangerous to unwary travelers. And these beasts all live together here without displacing each other. Taro seemed fascinated. It's an interesting cycle. Rin smiled, clearly enjoying sharing his knowledge with his friends. The shadow stalkers dominate the night. From air, they can safely absorb mana from the bark stalkers. They just need to avoid the weaver's threads hidden within the trees. The bark stalkers are practically defenseless against aerial attacks. Their shells protect them from ground threats, but offer little protection from above. So the giant toads hunt during the day? Exactly, to hide from shadow stalkers, Rin confirmed. They conceal themselves near trees and wait for moon weavers to come down for drinking or gathering nest materials. A weaver on the ground is easy prey if it doesn't notice the stalker in time. The stalker's incredible camouflage makes them nearly impossible to spot until it's too late. And when do the weavers sleep then? Min asked, leaning forward with growing interest. They sleep very little and are the only ones that can move both day and night, though they prefer daylight. Their webs are too fine to catch anything large, but shadow stalkers are very light. If one touches a thread in the darkness, every weaver in that tree's colony knows instantly. Ren considered the possibilities, each opportunity in this not-so-complex ecosystem. The materials they produce are very valuable. Stalker skin, when properly processed, is perfect for mana storage bags. It can contain crystals without letting them contaminate before processing. The same adaptations that help them regulate mana in their bodies make their skin perfect for storage. Are the weaver's threads valuable too? Taro seemed concerned about having to capture the nocturnal creatures Run had described as dangerous. They used to make mana detection amulets, Rin explained. A moon weaver's natural silk can sense energy fluctuations with remarkable precision. The same sensitivity that alerts them to predators makes their silk perfect for detecting mana disturbances. But aren't they dangerous too? You said if anything touches the web, the entire tree colony knows. Min observed worriedly as the beasts began to become more visible in the distance. Each passing minute seemed to reveal more details of the ecosystem Run had described. Not really. That's why the school chooses this zone, Rin explained, gesturing at their surroundings. Shadow stalkers only hunt at night when we'll be in the protected camp. Weavers avoid anything larger than themselves. They're cautious creatures by nature. And bark stalkers, well, they're so slow that simply watching where you step is enough to avoid them. Also, Professor Zhao can easily control the area, he added thoughtfully. Even hungry bronze beasts avoid this territory. The combination of mana-absorbing swarms and weavers that can alert and flee from any intruder makes it not worth their effort. The energy cost of hunting here outweighs any potential rewards for larger predators. The mushrooms pulsed while Run made mental calculations. At current market prices, a square meter of Shadowstalker skin was worth hundreds of crystals due to its unique mana-containing properties. Weaver silk, though more common, remained valuable for common miners and explorers who needed reliable mana detection. Even the herbs growing on Barkstalker's protective scales had their market as mana-poisoning remedies, though less efficient than those from inner rings. A simple ecosystem, he thought, studying the interplay of creatures and environment, but full of opportunities for those who know where to look. "This will be our base camp," Professor Zhao announced as students descended from the carts. His owl manifested fully now, enormous wings spreading protectively over the gathered group. Rin observed the area with attention. The clearing had been carefully selected, open enough to discourage moon weavers from establishing territories, yet with sufficient cover to protect them during the dangerous night hours. Natural barriers and carefully positioned guards would create a safe zone. During the day, Zhao continued, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "We'll focus on collecting weaver silk. It's the safest and most abundant resource in this zone." His eyes, sharpened by his owl's influence, methodically scanned the nearby trees for any signs of danger. But even that requires strict precautions. The assistants began distributing camouflage blankets among the students, each one specially treated with protective compounds. "These blankets are treated with Barkstalker essence," the professor explained, demonstrating the proper way to wear them. "The weavers will ignore them, thinking they're just another predator resting. As long as you move slowly, take only low-hanging threads, and keep the blanket over you, you can collect silk without getting jumped by the colony." "What about real Barkstalkers?" someone asked, their voice tinged with apprehension. "This area has been cleared," Zhao responded confidently, though his owl's wings shifted slightly. "We've removed the largest specimens and overly numerous weaver colonies." Still, his gaze hardened, commanding everyone's full attention. Caution is mandatory. He produced a small flare from his bag, its crystal core glowing with a soft blue radiance that pulsed in harmony with the ambient mana. "Each team will carry one of these. If for any reason you stray too far and my owl can't locate you, break it. The magical signal is unmistakable. Even most bronze-rank beasts avoid its frequency." "How far can we go?" Jean asked, his tiger manifesting eagerly in anticipation of the hunt. "My owl can cover approximately half a kilometer radius." Zhao indicated marks carved into the most distant trees. "Don't cross those limits, or you'll enter territories we haven't secured." He began pointing out specific areas. "Besides silk, you can collect moss from empty Barkstalker shells, their abandoned molts. It has value and is relatively safe to obtain, as long as you verify the shell is truly empty first." His wings spread fully as he rose a few meters to demonstrate his surveillance range, the downdraft making the students' clothes flutter. "But remember, I'm just one professor with one beast. I can't be everywhere at once. If you act recklessly while I'm handling an emergency in another sector," he let the implications sink in, the silence heavy with warning. "At night," he continued while descending gracefully, "it is absolutely forbidden to leave the camp. Shadowstalkers are practically invisible in darkness, and they can drain an iron-rank student in seconds. Their hunger makes them especially aggressive during the darkest hours." The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed while absorbing the information. The professor was meticulous in his planning. This zone was perfect for beginners, with controllable dangers but sufficient risk to keep them alert. The ecosystem itself would teach them valuable lessons about survival. "Stay in groups of 3, Zhao concluded, his owl's penetrating gaze sweeping across the gathered students. "Report anything unusual, and remember, while safety is paramount, don't forget this is a gathering class. Your grades will depend directly on the quantity and quality of materials you obtain. Stay in groups of at least 3, Zhao concluded, his owl's penetrating gaze sweeping across the gathered students. Report anything unusual, and remember, while safety is paramount, don't forget this is a gathering class. Your grades will depend directly on the quantity and quality of materials you obtain. As students began organizing themselves, Rin studied the nearest trees. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed gently, revealing patterns others might miss. The silk was valuable, yes, but he knew the real treasures lay at the edges of the marked territory, where beasts still maintained their natural behavior, undisturbed by human presence. I just need to be careful, he thought while the mushrooms pulsed softly in agreement. And choose the right moment. Now, Zhao spread his wings while surveying the students, his owl's influence making his presence even more imposing. These excursions happen only 3 times throughout the year, the professor continued. I hope you've paid attention in Professor Song's theoretical classes. Correct identification of valuable materials will be crucial for your success. A mocking laugh echoed from Jin's group, cutting through the serious atmosphere. Did you hear that, fungus? He called loud enough for everyone to hear. The theoretical classes. Aren't those the ones you never attended because you were too busy becoming less poor or running from us in the caves? More laughter joined in. It was true. Rin had spent most of those classes in the mines, both gathering and easily evading Jin and his group's clumsy pursuit. I guess being desperate for a few miserable iron crystals was more important than learning to identify valuable materials. Poor people logic, Jin continued, his tiger markings gleaming with malice. If student Patender considers he already masters the theory, Zhao intervened, his sharp gaze fixed on Rin, then his results in this excursion should reflect that. Rin maintained a neutral expression, though the mushrooms in his hair pulsed with quiet amusement. If his classmates knew he'd been gathering far more than miserable crystals all this time, the best performing groups, Zhao continued, drawing attention back to himself, won't just receive the highest grades. The school offers double bonuses for gatherings, remember. Several students' eyes lit up at the mention of rewards. Even Luna's noble followers seemed more interested, their previously bored expressions sharpening with sudden focus. But remember, Zhao's voice hardened, his owl's wings casting meaningful shadows. A dead student can't enjoy any bonus. Keep your priorities in order. Good luck with that, fungus. Jin smiled maliciously, his tiger markings rippling. Maybe you'll find some dry leaves worth as much as your iron crystals. Taro stepped forward, his beetle manifesting protectively, but Rin stopped him with a subtle gesture. I get you, Jin. Mushrooms are experts at identifying what's rotten and what's valuable, he responded simply, causing the laughter to choke off as they processed the double meaning. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed with satisfaction while Jin frowned, trying to decide if he'd just been insulted. Enough, Zhao cut in. You have until sunset for your first gathering. Don't forget your flares and stay within the marked boundaries. As groups began dispersing, Rin caught a slight smile playing at Luna's lips before she turned away with her companions. Let the others laugh, he thought while checking his equipment. Knowledge was almost everything, so he could skip almost any theoretical class. His mushrooms pulsed in agreement as he prepared to demonstrate exactly how much he'd learned during those wasted hours in the caves. Did you check your blanket? Taro asked while adjusting his own, his beetle manifesting darker markings that complemented the camouflage perfectly. Mine has a hole. Min examined his blanket with concern, his water snake coiling nervously. Do you think the weavers will notice? Rin spread his blanket next to Min's. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed while analyzing the problem. We can switch. Mine's bigger than I need. Nearby, Jin organized his group with characteristic confidence, his voice carrying across the clearing. Cass, you'll watch while Kai and I gather. He ordered, his tiger markings glowing with authority. Your eyes are better at detecting movement. What if I see a real bark stalker? Cass asked, her eagle feathers manifesting slightly. We crush it, Jin smiled, cracking his knuckles menacingly. The professor said they removed the big ones, didn't they? A few meters away, Klein and his noble companions inspected their equipment with meticulous precision. These containers are too basic, Foam complained, his red cobra manifesting in scarlet patterns. We have better ones at home. Focus, Klein ordered, his golden lion gleaming while studying the trees. The highest quality silk will be in the higher zones. Rin noticed Luna keeping her distance from her assigned companions, who whispered among themselves while watching her with poorly concealed admiration. I should thank her, he thought. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed softly as he approached. Luna, he called softly, his voice barely carrying above the general commotion. About what you said in the card. She glanced at him sidelong, her shadow wolf barely visible as a silhouette stretching across the ground. Don't misinterpret it. I merely stated a fact. Still, thank you. Luna seemed to consider his words for a moment, her wolf's presence making the shadows around them deepen slightly. Your knowledge is interesting, she said finally, though she avoided looking at him directly. Most only see the obvious. Before Rin could respond, one of the noble girls approached nervously, her eyes darting between Luna and the mysterious mushroom boy. Luna, should we start with the eastern sector? The trees seem more. Do what you want. Luna cut her off, walking away with measured steps. But Rin noticed her path led precisely toward the eastern sector she'd apparently dismissed. Rin, Min called out. I found something weird with these containers. As he returned to his group, Rin reflected on the brief interaction. The mushrooms in his hair pulsed, reminding him they had their own plans for this excursion, plans that would surprise everyone. What did you find? He asked Min, who was holding one of the containers with a puzzled expression. Aren't these supposed to be sealed? This one has a crack. Taro joined the examination. We could ask for a replacement. No. Rin smiled while the mushrooms pulsed knowingly. Actually, this could be useful later. His friends exchanged knowing looks. After a month, they'd learned that when Rin smiled like that, he had a plan, one that usually worked out better than anyone expected. Just make sure to keep the flares handy, he murmured while the professor began calling groups to assign sectors. We might need them for